lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live, episode number 255. It is Saturday night, January the 25th, 2025. Lots of fives tonight. My name is Jeremy Lee. Everybody, welcome to the show. Tomorrow night, Fanatics Hockey Weekly with Josh Madigan of The Gong Show. I'd like to give some love to a few of our sponsors and partners here. If you are looking to add a grail to your collection, make sure to check out Fund Your Cards, the hobby's leading consolidator. They will help you finance the purchase with your own cards. Visit fundyourcards.com, and there you will find their proprietary client platform that cements them as the leaders in the consolidation space. And guys, Mint Inc. is a leading hobby brand in Canada. Check out their 2 Toronto locations. Their online shopping with worldwide shipping. They do live stream shopping, options, breaks, grading, and more. Their primary focus is to bring the ultimate hobby experience to the collectors in Canada and internationally. If you're buying from them online, mintinc.ca, everybody. And if you'd like to sell your cards, but you want on eBay, but you would like the pros to handle it for you, reach out to me and I can help you consign your cards with Slab Sharks. Hit me up on Instagram or send me an email to jeremy@slabsharks.com. Leighton Sheldon will be joining us a little later from his hotel. He's out on a buying trip. We will hear a little bit about that. And everybody, this show is available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe for free, leave a rating or review. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you, as always, to all of our loyal viewers and listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, to the podcast, please take a moment and do so. And as always, and we will do our best to keep up, your comments and your questions are in play tonight. Let's bring out our co-host, Mr. Joe Poirot, from Santa Cruz, Cali Dreamin', 84 on Instagram. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Jay Lee. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm wondering, there's a Lakers-Warriors game going on right now. How distracted are you going to be until that game ends?
I have long gotten used to hitting the record and catching up with it later. I did catch a Warriors G League game last night. I got a selfie with their new center, Quentin Post, who scored 20 the other night in one of his first NBA games. So I feel sated and I am a little distracted. And if you see me looking back in that direction, there might be a TV on. So apologies.
So you're recording it, which means you don't want to know the score, which means we have to ask the chat. Please don't give us updates in the chat on the score in the Warriors Lakers game tonight, everybody. We got a great show. We got another star-studded lineup, if I might say so myself. Joe, I'm excited to have everybody on with us, but let's go to the chat and say hello to everybody. Hobby Champs says, the thing that pisses me off most about the hobby is buyers' tendency to favor speculation over results and also favoring demand over supply and demand. I think it's an astute comment. The thing that I would say to Hobby Champs here is, you know, the savvy collector hobbyist would take that first thing that pisses you off and find a way to make it work for them, you know. Laura, good evening to you. I'm glad you like that winning lineup. Kevin Hawthorne from Lakeland, Florida is here. Jacob Dahl, what's going on? Linda's first son, Michael, is here. David Archbell, good to see you. The professor is here. Good to see you. Brett Miles. Yeah, that was funny. Good to see you, Brett. Good evening. Mike Double V, what's going on? David Marone, what's going on, buddy? Jeff McMahon, nice. I shaved a while ago, Dave. Shaved in December, but thank you very much. Orlando from A Collector's Dream is here. What's going on, Orlando? Wesley collects cards from North Carolina. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. Chad Shipper, what's happening, buddy? Todd McDonald, everybody's here. BST Sports Cards. Robert Scott, good to see you. Stukes, Curmudgeon is here. Michael Stone. Mike, I always like seeing you, Michael Stone, when you decide to show up. Good to see you, buddy. Collector's Dream, watching the Panthers and Sharks game and listening to Jeremy. Perfect Sunday. Hey, way to go, Orlando. I appreciate that. CRT Sports Cards is here. What's going on, Chris? Frank Gastella, Mookie Chilson. Howley Hustle is here. What's going on, Eric Myers? We've got Chad Shipper, Always Sunny in Jolan. What's going on with the big empty case? But it's not empty. It's just bad lighting. Or are you talking about this here? That's actually like a pretend fireplace heater. That's what that is. The Rated Rabbi, David Spinrad, is here. David, we're going to have you on tonight soon. Mark Santucci, what is going on, buddy? Good to see you. He's talking about the Raiders. He's talking about Saturdays and Mondays. Octavio, what's going on, buddy? And Daniel A, good to see you as well. Daniel, very much love it. All right, guys. We have our first guest coming on. It is going to be the Rated Rabbi. David Spinrad will be joining us in about 10 minutes or so from now. Before then, there's one topic I thought we'd just touch on because everyone's talking about it, and I am not going to pretend to know everything about it, but it's interesting, and we might have a little bit of a take to get to very quickly. Ben Burrows. Ben will be on, I think, next Saturday night. He's coming back from Collect. Good to have him coming on again. What's Duke doing? Sorting 55 Bowman football right now. That's awesome. That's what you got to be doing. Looking at your cards, listening to the show, watching this show, whatever. What's up, Nanya? Good to see you again. Yeah, Laura, that's what we're going to talk about. The Paul Skenes patch pull. How much fact? How much? That's a great title right there. How much fact? How much fiction? Laura, maybe you should write eBay titles from now on. Found Treasures. Welcome to the show. What's going on? And Hockey 99, I saw you as well. All right. Joe, so this Paul Skenes, the debut patch, the 1 of 1, gets pulled by an 11-year-old kid. I don't mean to disrespect him by calling him a kid, but you're a kid at 11. Pulls the card. The hobby hears nothing about it for a month, basically, because apparently it was pulled on Christmas Day. Card goes to PSA, gets graded, comes back at 10, 10 on the card, 10 on the auto. It is also it's been publicized that this card will be featured in the February premiere auction on Fanatics Collect, which I'm really happy about because for me and Adam Gray, we're going to cover that auction as what we do for Fanatics Collect every month. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that auction ending live and talking about all that. But I guess, Joe, I'm going to put it to you. What do you know about this situation? Do you have a take on it? The conspiracy theorists are saying that it's all planted. It's all a big, pull one over the collector's eyes again sort of thing. And then there's another faction of people that are saying, well, this is what you do. You don't put an 11-year-old out there. Whether they had some journal entries by this 11-year-old that they put pictures out. And the only thing I will say is that my 7-year-old writes a lot. And no offense to this 11-year-old, but I mean, that it's just one of the things you think about. Like it's not very, very good writing for an 11-year-old the way it looks. But all that said, what are your thoughts, Joe, on the situation?
Yeah, I haven't taken in too much information about it, but I mean, I would be interested in protecting the identity of a child, and not have the world coming at them, even under the best of circumstances like this. And I don't really subscribe to any of the conspiratorial ideas out there. It makes sense to me, and I think I think it's understandable too, probably, that the hobby feels a little kind of existential angst in these moments because the card is so hyped, and so when there's not like an obvious narrative that's presented to everybody in a way that they can kind of see it with their own eyes and feel like the experience is validated in their own way, that they ask questions. That's the nature of being a human being, is you're looking for answers all the time. So I think it is also part of the story that maybe you and Adam will touch on when that premiere auction comes around, is the idea of bounties and what the opportunity that the Pittsburgh Pirates put out there to meet Livy Dunn and season tickets forever versus what the ultimate selling price is. And I think we'll all be curious what that card goes for. And this is one thing I mentioned to you briefly. I think I'm in the minority, but I don't really actually find the card. I understand the concept, and it's a cool concept, having a patch of a first game debut performance, but I don't actually find the card all that appealing aesthetically myself. But that's not to say it's not a super amazing card, and somebody hopefully out there is going to be really interested in enjoying it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said. keeping an 11-year-old's identity out of the public. I mean, I think I would probably do the same. But it'll be interesting to see. There's some good comments here already. And I want to go to, first of all, Brett Miles here says that, it pisses me off, the overwhelming need for the intricate details of a Paul Skenes 1-of-1 poll. Sometimes we don't need all the transparency. Yeah, Brett, but there's a big part of the hobby that feels a lot differently than that. They want to know. But you know what? Without transparency, it allows for theorists, whether it's conspiracy theorists or more positive theorists, to come out. It does allow for all that speculation. But how about this one? This is one I did not know about this, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm going to put it on the screen and read it. Hockey 99 says to Joe, what do you make of Ken Golden complaining? So first of all, I can't verify this happened. I didn't see this, but apparently from what this guy is saying, Ken Golden complained. The 11-year-old's family didn't reach out to him, Ken Golden. Ken Golden seems to be hinting at a monopoly. I don't know how much of this is conjecture by Hockey 99, or he's heard other people say that. But are you aware of this, Joe? Does this mean anything to you, or is it just a nothing burger?
I think we're friends of Ken Golden and on this station, and I've got no issue with him wanting to have probably the most sort of interesting current card on the market. And you know what? He probably will. It'll probably end up in a golden auction at some point. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, on the second go. Well, Daniel A says Ken Golden wants to donate all of the buyer's premium commissions to help out the fires in LA. No, that's not a bad thing at all, for sure. What's up, Jason Pringle? Good to see you, buddy. Yes, the Flames win. Mark Santucci, the New Jersey Devils, took it in overtime, 4-3. Bob Boozle, good to see you, buddy. How's the wife? Welcome to the show. HB, welcome to the show. He's happy to see you, Joe. Very nice. Laura says Fanatics portion of the auction win, or their commission, will also go to LA Fire Relief. So I've heard. So that levels that playing field right there. Michael Stone says the only thing I'm curious about is, did Fanatics Tops ask them to keep this quiet to keep box prices up? Yeah, I think that's a legitimate question to ask, but who knows? I mean, that's totally, I believe it's speculation, conspiracy theory type of stuff, but it's a good question to ask, no doubt. Orlando says, I think Fanatics told the kid to write a story, good marketing, and the kid stays private. Yep, that sounds good. Bob Boozle wishes his wife was committed to her food journal. Ben Burrows from Collect says, from what I've been told, the family specifically requested to have their identity protected, and that was an important part of the process to start. Okay. I mean, coming from a reliable source, being Ben Burrows at Collect, I think that's probably the most reliable, chat comment on this topic that we've seen so far here tonight. Because I'm going to trust a media outlet like Collect on that one. Anyway, Mark, yeah, Joe off-centered special. Mike Double V, unfortunately, it's a bit predictable that the immediate response is conspiracy theory. For those people, it's only legit if they pull it. Yeah, that's not totally wrong there, Mike, for sure. We have the hobby president, John Mangini, in the house right now, everybody. Good to see you, John. Welcome to the show. Foul Ball, good to see you. Vintage says, as we all know, Ken's ego is off the charts. I'm happy it didn't go to him. That is a quote by Vintage Card Collector. Orlando says, will all good debut patches be redemption so Fanatics gets it first? That's a great question, Orlando. I don't know the answer. I have to think I think they're all going to be redemptions. I don't know that for certain. It's like, why would some be and some not be? Maybe it depends on when the player plays, I suppose. But in any event, if you're Tops and you have a common parent with Fanatics Collect being Fanatics, you're going to try to, I think you're going to try and keep them in your own ecosystem. So that just comes down to relationships and salesmanship. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with attempting that, but the owners of the card, they can make that decision for themselves at the end of the day. Jamie Hauser says Ken might think highly of himself to the effect he would have gotten a call. Maybe he was surprised when he didn't. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's got a huge stage in this hobby, being he's the only one with a Netflix show, guys. I mean, that's bigger than anything in the hobby. I saw Jay Blaze put on Instagram today a thing about this, and he said, and he called himself the face of the hobby. And I thought to myself, I don't know, but Ken Golden might be to the greater society. Rip and list, what's going on? The hobby with Cage. Cage says, I don't think there's a conspiracy, just a very interesting information flow. It broke perfectly for fanatics. Yes, it did. And it gets a 10. Yes, it did, Laura. Hello, Alan Terwell of Waxstat. And Jacob Dahl says, Ken Golden needs to grow up. The family can consign the card to whoever they want. Yeah, I mean, but you know what? There's also, I'm not saying that he's entitled to it at all, but he does have a record of getting big cards, and he's in direct competition with Fanatics Collect. So I don't think he had much of a chance, really. Well, maybe he did. Who knows? But he might have to get used to losing Topps cards to Fanatics, or figure out something else to elevate his presentation, where he tries to lure these cards in. Ben Burrows speaks about the box prices. Why is Topps Fanatics required to announce when a product hit is pulled? Curious what the group thinks. I mean, that's even if they know when a product, on a redemption they know, but on anything else they don't always know right away. That's a great question though, Ben. Should a product hit card that is a redemption, should the manufacturer publicize, like almost press release, when that card is redeemed with them? That's a pretty interesting question, Joe.
Well, it brings to mind the Olympic, maybe it was the Topps Now Olympic card of Steph Curry and KD, I think it was, the triple auto. And I'm not sure if that ever got located. And I know a lot of people sent in for that. So at least in this case, there's some degree of, completion to the excitement. Because I'm thinking maybe someone in the chat can remind me if the LeBron Curry KD card got pulled at some point.
That was the Topps Now card, right?
Yeah, or found, I should say, because it wasn't coming out of a box. It was just sent out by Topps. But that's one of those situations. I mean, I guess that would be an alternative to this narrative where, where's the Skenes debut card? Nobody's still sure where it is. And at least in this case, despite people's ideas about the underlying narrative, it's out there. And I think that brings to fruition people's, sense of excitement.
For sure. Well, here we have Cage responds to Ben, says they aren't, Ben, but if they affirmatively ask folks not to say anything, that's a different story. Not saying it happened here. All very fair. Hockey, it's a fun story. Hope this card maintains this cool story. Hope we'll see if Skeen is the real deal as the years go by. Michael Stone is fine either way, because 95% of these products cost too much for me anyway. Right on. Rated Rabbi, get yourself into the studio, sir. We're ready for you, David Spinrad, to join us on the show. And David's got a nice topic to discuss, guys. Laura says this product came with such an extensive package. I don't know what that means. Orlando, Topps didn't report it right away, waited 3 weeks to announce it, that it was redeemed. And again, that comes down to, are they obligated to do that? I don't think they are, but if they don't, then people are going to say you're not telling us because you want box prices to stay the same. That's a really interesting question. Again, back to that, should the manufacturer disclose once a big redemption has been redeemed and that process has started? Very much so. Michael Stone says the triple auto has not been revealed yet at this time. Ben Burrows says my impression is the family requested the slow play, not the other way around.
Right.
Ben and Cage are going back and forth. He said, I sent you the link. David. You should have gotten the email early today or yesterday. So I'm going to go right now, guys, and see why David didn't get it. Because, David, you are not on the email that I sent out. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I'm going to forward this to you right now, David. It is coming to you. How did I not send this to you? That's like the first time that's ever happened, everybody, to me. I'm going to send that to David right now. Let's make sure oh, come on. Where's that email, David? David, are you Rated Rabbi, or are you David Spinrad on your email? Oh, there it is. Okay, David, here it comes to your email right now, and send. All right, I forwarded on the original. It's there. I apologize for that. It is on its way to you. Okay, Cage says, and you know the family doing an expose on them, Ben, is the dad a regular hobby box breaker? All right, all right. Hockey, good to hear an 11-year-old receive this. It sounds unlikely a CT scanner was used here to obtain it. Michael Ham, what's going on, buddy? He says it feels shady. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a default position for a lot of people right now. Okay. Hey, Cage wants the blood type, not just the social security number. Michael Stone says Pirates tickets for 30 years plus more was that package, right? Yeah, that was a pretty nice package. But at the end of the day, an 11-year-old, potentially life-changing money that could be invested now. And, in 10, 15, 20 years could be a lot more money than it is now versus tickets to baseball games. Like, I don't know. I think I'm taking the money myself at that point. And I mean, I've seen some people say, who wouldn't want to go sit with Livy Dunn? Well, that's all you're doing is sitting with her, guys. Like, who cares? Personally, it's not interesting at all. All right. Yeah, Laura from the Pittsburgh Pirates years of season tickets. Sexton's Kentucky Cardboard says Steven Strasburg was also a very hyped prospect and turned out to be a good pitcher. Skenes is more likely to be Strasburg than Walter Johnson. That's really interesting right there because I immediately think back to Strasburg. And I remember I think his superfractor sold for like $20,000 when it came out. And it's like 20 years or so ago, and it was mind-blowing. $20,000. Now these things sell for $1 million, like comparable cards. Joe, do you remember that when the Strasburg came out?
I do. I remember how much hype was around that.
Yeah, crazy technical difficulties, guys. David, I'm hoping you're on your way. We're gonna get David in here in a moment, guys. USMNT for the family, not wanting anyone to know they have the card. It sure seems like a lot of people know they have the card. Well, now they do. Now they do for sure. Jamie says Livy Dunn won't need to get restraining order against a middle-aged creeper that would pass up six figures. Right, exactly, Jamie. That's what I'm thinking too. Right there. Michael Stone, don't forget about Mark Pryor when he came out as well. Brian Taylor, he didn't even really come out, even though he was definitely hyped. Take the money, says Found Treasures. Michael Stone agrees. I don't think there's anything the Pirates could do to convince him not to take the money. Joe is sitting with Livy, admitted Joe. Greasy Pigeon, good evening. And guys, we are going to bring on right now our first guest of the evening, the Rated Rabbi, Mr. David Spinrad. Welcome to Sports Cards Live, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Jeremy. Hey, Joe. It's good to be here.
Good to see you, David.
Same.
Good to have you, David. Now, I mean, listen, you've been watching. I'm glad you have. Do you have any sort of thoughts on the current discussion before we jump into the topic that you wanted to bring to the show tonight?
Yeah, my response is sell. If you have Paul Skenes, sell and sell and sell and sell. I have a 2019 Topps Heritage Superfractor of Max Scherzer. I just have moved to the DC area. That's the year they won the World Series. Scherzer, Verlander, Kershaw, those guys are monsters, right? First ballot, surefire Hall of Famer. You can have those cards for a tiny fraction of Paul Skenes. He's a Pirate. He hasn't even torn his UCL. He hasn't had Tommy John surgery. Sell.
Yeah.
Speaking of, if we want to talk Tommy John, I wasn't expecting this, but this past year I started collecting uncommons, right? I'm very, very, very disciplined about what I buy, but I also need to get cards every now and then. So an uncommon is a card that costs under $5, including tax and shipping. And it's just that's so funny. It's on my desk next to me. I have a 1976 Tommy John, and I would argue that this line 1975 on disabled list is the most famous on disabled list in sports history. Just fun uncommons. Help me keep my discipline on the big cards. Anyway, it's good to be here.
Fun little show and tell there to kick things off. And I agree on the sell. If anyone's looking, I think the family definitely made the right decision. If the Pirates wanted to throw in $250,000 cash, now we're talking, that could go a long way. But and I don't even know if that gets it done. But I hear you. Orlando agrees. Great advice from David. So David, first of all, it's great to have you back. We've done an episode together a while ago, but this is Sports Cards Live 2.0, new format. I'm glad to have you. And just quickly, because we're a little behind, because my fault, I don't know how I missed that. Leighton Sheldon will be joining us in about 5 minutes, but so he'll join our discussion, David, but I want to hear from you. I asked you to bring a topic. I know what it's going to be, but why don't you introduce it, and let's get the chat going on your thoughts, guys. And what are you thinking?
I got lots of thoughts, but I want to start with this one. I kind of take our hobby and then I try to pull all the way out and see it in the context of everything. And both it's a microcosm for me of human existence, and it's part of the greater totality of humanity. And one thing I've been thinking about lately is, the Surgeon General several years ago said we have an epidemic of loneliness in the world. And we're in a time where, even though we're super connected, there's a lot of isolation. We have, more mental health challenges than we've ever had. And when we're in times of distress, one of the ways we respond is to soothe ourselves. And one of the ways we soothe ourselves is by acquiring material possessions, by buying things to feel better, by filling whatever that hole is we're feeling inside, by filling it temporarily with cards. And I have the feeling I'm not the only person who has stood in the kitchen at 10:38 on a Sunday night without my glasses and bid on a card I really didn't need, just to have that little hit to fill that hole. And so what I was thinking about lately is, a lot of us got back into the hobby in that time of even greater isolation, COVID. I was one of them, and a lot of really, really neat collectors were a part of that big wave. And in getting back into the hobby through this acquisition, what we were actually searching for was connection. Connection is the only thing that really actually fills that longing. Being in community helps to fill the loneliness. Knowing people are thinking about us and caring about us, and sometimes even more so that we're thinking about others and caring for them. So this almost ironic thing happened where we were reaching for something to fill that longing, and in reaching, I mean, not to sound sappy, but we kind of found each other, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And one of the ways that's manifested is, the hobby is much bigger than it was several years ago. It was already growing before COVID. A ton of us got back in. I got back in kind of late COVID, January of 2021, about 4 years ago. And as a consequence of so many people reaching for fulfillment and so many people staying, there are so many newish and returnee collectors who I think bring a lot to the hobby. People who are thoughtful and creative and interdisciplinary, meaning they come from other places and apply things they know that you would think have nothing to do with cards, but then apply to cards. And as a consequence, I just think there are some amazing, incredible collectors. It's not just the OGs. Some of us have been around for 4 years or so, or maybe a little bit longer. And in order for us to build collections, some of us are returning to the hobby, help put the wind in the sails of you OGs, the guys with the big collections. Not to say you're not amazing, incredible collectors with phenomenal personal collections, but we have to be a little savvier. We have to think a little bit differently. For me, I think about my collection, by necessity, needs to be really small, really clean, really clear. In order for me to create something enduring, I have to think a little differently and just approach this differently than had I had 20 or more years in the hobby.
Yeah, I hear you. Good stuff. I was just having a little bit of internet issue, but I think it's healthier now, which is good. David, thank you for those. We have comments coming in, and I'm going to get to them. But I agree. When I first went live on YouTube and did a live stream, it was at the very beginning of the pandemic. A lot of, as you said, a lot of collectors were coming in, and right away that community was almost an instant community. And not just sports cards live, but like hobby YouTube, hobby Instagram, hobby Twitter. These things all became communities. And I think so many of us would agree and have had the experience that we've all made so many friends. Joe, I mean, you and I became friends. David, you and I became friends because of this. Leighton, who's going to join us in a few minutes, became friends because of the desire to not be alone in our houses, just with our devices, let's say, and not have any social interaction. So I love the topic because it's really why we're here. It's why we're here.
Yeah.
Right. Joe, any thoughts on that before we go to the comments?
Just that it resonates with my experience, and it is one of the central joys, communing with fellow collectors, and also learning what other lenses they bring to their hobby, their hobbydom, and also just sort of life perspectives as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to read a couple comments from the chat, guys. Mookie Chilson says retail therapy is real. David, please type that right when you were speaking. Todd McDonald, loved when you had your podcast. David, will you be doing any new episodes in 2025?
Well, so my podcast was called the Raider Rabbi Sports Card Podcast, about sports cards, pop culture, and the 1984 All-Star Game. And it was a companion to an 80 card PSA graded master set that had the full rosters and the announcers and the honorary captains and the coaches. And I told a story. I told a story through an ABC broadcast out of LA in '84 from start to finish. Commercials, so many things. It was so incredible. Super, super fun, super amazing deep dives into just the minutia. I love finding like little cracks and crevices and opening up and doing deep dives and making connections. Met some incredible people through the podcast. The people I serve in the congregation who found out about it for the most part were delighted. I did get a little pushback from our senior lay leaders about an episode I did that was about that included a segment about the top 5 serial killers from the 1980s. Well, Joe, you're a Californian. Growing up, weren't there like 1 million serial killers all the time? Wasn't that weird?
It was definitely a thing. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, between cults, serial killers, rapists.
Yeah.
I mean, there was
crazy, dude. Bottom of the 8th inning, they had a commercial for the Night Stalker, who is the #1 scariest serial killer for me of the 1980s. So anyway, I was on vacation over the summer, and I had been thinking, kind of timelining, mapping it out, and I realized I was about done telling the story, and I kind of pointed my ship in the direction that I ended it on the 84th episode. So 84 episodes, 84 All-Star Game. And the coolest thing was I didn't tell anybody. I just dropped it as a surprise. And then I've just, for the most part, been quiet. I actually have a super, super duper cool idea, totally different. So season 2 is kind of brewing. I'm in no hurry. I don't want to do what anybody else is doing. And there's a few really great YouTube channels and podcasts, including this one that I don't like. I don't want to do what's already been done. I'm never going to do.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's it.
Stay tuned. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to some comments. Leighton's in the back room. We're going to bring him up in just a minute. I want to read some comments first here. Foul Ball doesn't buy cards online, so he doesn't get that feeling. That's such an interesting way to approach the hobby. And I know Foul Ball. His name's also Jeremy. Great guy. When we met in person, and it's I can't imagine that, but all the power to you. 100% on point. Dave says Ben Diamond. And Foul Ball says, so many experts of the hobby since COVID. He could not be more right about that comment right there. All you need is a microphone and a camera to be an expert in the hobby. All you need is a phone really these days, right? Brett Miles says, great points, Dave. This is a growing hobby, an evolving one that older collectors like myself need to navigate. There's a need to adapt to the new landscape. That is to me, that's the approach. The need to adapt or don't, and just continue as you are if you can. Ben Burrow says, I think often about how passionate some of the new collectors have been. Many caught up on the space so quickly, and it's wonderful to see. That's what we don't hear enough about, are the people the new collectors who are, in it, let's just say for I was going to say the right reasons, but the new collectors who have stuck it out, maybe they lost some money by making some bad decisions, but they stuck it out because they do love being in the hobby with the rest of us. Orlando says YouTube is about community. It enhances our hobby. Yes, it does. Michael Stone says COVID got me back into the hobby, and many of you guys as content creators have kept me in the hobby. That's awesome. Michael Stone. Rob Scott, the hobby is not the same without this community. David hit it spot on. What's up, the authentic sports card dad? He says, I have to listen later. It's Tinder hunting night. Good luck with that. Authentic Sports Cards Dad, which I think is a bit of a spin on the Dust in the Sports Card Dad, one of those sort of accounts. Jeff Hart, good evening, good to see you. D Nugs, welcome to the show. CRT says come to the PNW. Yelia, what's going on? D Nugs, Jeremy, what are your thoughts on the Topps Finest? I like Topps Finest products a lot. I think they're beautiful. Mookie says, I'm so thankful there was a healthy, vibrant community that kept the hobby light on while I was gone, and so happy they left the welcome mat out for all who returned. I think that makes a lot of sense. Mookie, Bob Hosta, what's going on, buddy? And Justin Bode is in the house. Justin, good to see you, bud. And we've got Zach Nygett from Collector Creative. I don't know if you guys saw, but last week I showed this card that I picked up from Collector Creative. This is the 1-of-1 Chicago card, Jordan Pippen Rodman.
Nice.
He sells these on his website. Check out Collector Creative, guys. I keep this right now. It's on my desk today. And sports card shorts, I'm afraid Pokemon is going to take over shows. Yeah, so much Pokemon, but well, we'll see what the show managers do about that. Okay, we're going to bring on David and Joe. We're going to bring on Leighton Sheldon now. He's on his buying trip. Leighton, you good to come? You ready? You ready? He's ready. Mr. Leighton Sheldon, where are you right now, buddy? And welcome to the show.
I'm not exactly sure, Jeremy. I'm in Rochester, New York, I think.
Rochester, what, Minnesota or New York? There's two of them.
New York.
See, a Canadian knows his U.S. geography. I think I impressed a couple of people there, did I not? Come on, did I not?
I think you did. Hey, what's up, Joe and David? How are you?
Hey, Leighton.
Good to see you, Leighton.
Good to see you guys.
So, Leighton, so a couple things. First of all, you came in, you listened to us talking about community. I always want to hear your opinion on these types of things and others. So, first of all, could you tell us a bit about your thoughts on this whole community and COVID? And even, you've started up your own podcast, doing a great job. Your Brady Hill interview was excellent. I love Brady. Great guy, great hobbyist, down to earth despite his mind-blowing collection. So first of all, your thoughts on the whole community aspect that David brought to the show tonight. And then tell us, you're on a buying trip. What's going on there? What happened? Did you buy something? Let's hear it.
Sure. So, as far as community goes, I don't know that I have something different to add or that's better than everyone else has added. But Jeremy, when I see you at a convention, I look forward to it. David, if I see you on occasion, maybe at a big convention like the National, I look forward to it. And so, like I said, I don't have anything else to add other than I enjoy the human element of the shows and the interaction at the shows. And I'd also add to that, my recent kind of foray of diving into these Facebook communities. It's a little bit of work, but it's nice to know the human being that's getting my card versus just having it on eBay. One of my staff members ships it out to them. And so, I'm very grateful for the community. And candidly, I don't think any of us are here tonight because of the big bucks that we're getting. We're doing it because we enjoy it. So, I think that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. So, Joe or David, any response or feedback for Leighton on that?
Agreed. And the episode with Brady, I listened to it this morning, and oh my God, that was an awesome one, Leighton.
Oh, I'm really grateful you guys tuned in. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, I just got to say, if you haven't listened to Leighton's episode on the Trading Card Therapy podcast on the Just Collect YouTube channel, Brady Hill he's like to me, listen, OG is a weird word, but I first met Brady in like 2009, 10, 11, something like that at a national. And he was set up with Jeff from Card Country. And these guys taught me a lesson in strong for the grade. That's how these guys always approached it. They were a decade ahead of the rest of us on that, or at least, me and whoever discovered kind of got more, put their attention to that. But just a really great collector and an amazing collection. And he's a little bit more modest than he needed to be, I think, because he's just a good person in this hobby who I really like. I'll leave it at that. Okay. Leighton, tell us a bit more about the buying trip you're on. I'm curious, did you buy a collection? What are you looking at? What do you expect to happen here? Was the viewing today? Is it tomorrow? What's going on? Or have you done a bunch? Is it a bunch of views?
It started yesterday, and it's ongoing. I have an appointment tomorrow morning at 8:30, so you never sleep. That being said, I actually have something here I wanted to share with you. I haven't shared it with anyone yet. And it's interesting because it's not often that if I showed you, for example, something like this, where something that's not really a card would actually be more interesting. And so what I'm referring to is the gentleman that I bought this 86 Clear Jordan and the entire set, as well as the stickers. This gentleman bought them back, I don't know, decades ago. And he actually elaborated a little bit more and said, my mom actually bought it for me. I said, oh, that's interesting. And so he's taking out the cards. He hasn't gone through them in a very long time. And he said, oh my gosh, darn it. I can't believe I have the receipt from 38 years ago.
Holy.
When his mother bought him the set of clear basketball cards in 1987 for $17.95 plus a $1.25 tax. And a special shout out to the Paper Express in Rochester, New York, because they included that with the receipt.
Wow.
And so what's this worth? I don't know, but I think it's super cool. And I'm very nerdy about stuff like this. And he thought I was kidding. I'm like, listen, I'll do the deal with the receipt. And he's like, I'm like, no, I'm being totally serious. I need that receipt for the collection.
Yeah, Mark Santucci. How classic is that receipt? Totally, Mark. That's awesome. Leighton, to me, it also that adds a story. It's provenance on the card. Not that you know who bought it, but it's still attached to the person that originally did. That to me is really cool. Yeah, right here. I'm guessing that's Julian from the Currency Project who's coming on later tonight. It says provenance at its finest. Jordan Cardman listening from Australia. Collector Creative. Cool story, Leighton. Love to know that type of stuff is still out there for sure. Yeah, BSD, Leighton, check the return terms on that item right there. Yeah, no, that's really cool, man. So you're having a good buying trip. You're interested. I liked your comment on the community piece of that. And I want to go now. I want to mention something else. David, you had talked about the uncommon, and I have to ask you, is the uncommon the same thing as the because you said an uncommon is something that is $5 or less with tax and shipping. So I mean, oftentimes you can buy a common for a dime, 25 cents, and whatever. With shipping and tax and for $3 shipping, you're already at $5. Is an uncommon also a common, but you just respect the common so much that you call it an uncommon? Why did you say that?
Well, that's a good question. So an uncommon is, and again, it allows me to scratch the itch as I'm saving for more significant cards and ones that are more expensive. A card that is worth having in my collection, again, under $5 all in, and it's a special card. So I have one more that's just sitting right here. This to me is an excellent example because it's significant in the hobby. I chased the heck out of this card and I never could pull this card, right? Series 1, 89 hoops, never pulled it. You can get this nicely centered under $5 all in. Like, this is a great PC card. It's an uncommon, common card. And it allows me just to do deep dive into the nooks and crannies of the hobby, see beautiful cards that don't get any attention, or they've just are overproduced, or it's a nobody, and have a really good time doing it, and then not hate myself in the morning for spending money I shouldn't have.
So an uncommon is a card that back in the day was not a common, say according to Beckett Price Guide,
right?
But as time has gone by, and now we're looking at maybe it fits really to the junk wax era type of stuff. It's become so cheap because there's so many out there. But it's not a common according to say Beckett, right? But it's so you use the term uncommon because it's become like a common as far as how much you have to pay for it.
Let me give you one more example. So Hall of Famer Dave Winfield, 1976 Topps. He looks like a Greek god, like a statue. He's finishing the swing, blue sky behind it. You can get a centered one, an X condition, again, for under $5. So not just a nobody, but who's looking for a mid-grade raw Dave Winfield from 76? It's just so fun.
Well, and it's interesting because we shortly in about 15 minutes, we're going to bring on Mike Sommer, Wax Pack Hero, and he's coming. He was listening to our episode last week where I don't even remember the exact part, Joe, but at some point I suppose we were disrespecting the base card, maybe referred to it as junk, or, I give them away on Halloween. And he sent me a message on Twitter saying basically, hey, hold on a second, I've done pretty well in the base card business. I said, hey, come on the show and make the case for base cards. So he's going to come on shortly, and we're gonna get into that. I want to go to a couple comments here, guys. The chat is like the fifth square on our screen right now. So first of all, the Currency Project, happy Saturday to you. Sports Card Shorts wants to know if Pokemon is huge in Canada. I mean, it's as huge here as it is in the States, let's say, except that Canada's 1/10 of the population. So adjust for that. But yes, it is huge here. We have a monthly card show here in Calgary. I set up at it a couple Saturdays ago, or last Saturday actually. And for the first time, they had to put Pokemon on its own floor because there was too much. And I didn't even go up there, but I could see up because it was an open, one of those 2-floor like mall type of things. It was packed up there. And downstairs on the sports side, it was busy, but not like it was up there. Guys, more Hockey says, I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I'm greatly amused by sports card content creators now entering the Pokemon space just because it's on fire. Well, I think this came up last week, guys. I'm not seeing that, so I can't speak to it. But yeah, I mean, hey, some people just go to where the action is, and some people stick with what they love. We're not going to get into Pokemon on this channel. We did that about 3-4 years ago. We dabbled in it a little bit because it was hot, but I just no authentic passion about it. So we're not doing that anymore. Leighton, when you're at shows lately, are you seeing as much Pokemon as you're seeing sports card, or what you would kind of like to be a sports card show?
I mean, I definitely see a lot of Pokemon, but I see One Piece cards because I look for that with my son. I mean, listen, I look at going to a card show as something fun to do as an activity. And honestly, I try to temper my expectations. So in other words, if you're going to go to a show as a dealer, of course, I want to spend money. I want to try to acquire product that I can maybe sell at a later date. But man, if you put all that pressure on yourself, you kind of lose the beauty in like the small stuff. Getting a snack with your son, right? Opening a pack at the show, like an 89 Fleer baseball, looking for a Billy Ripken. So, I'm not bothered the way that some others have at least vocalized that, the percentage of Pokemon is getting too high at my card show. If it was 98%, I guess I'd be disappointed because I want to see more sports cards. But honestly, I know a lot of people who deal in Pokemon that also deal in sports. So I don't have a problem with it.
Guys, I got a phone call 2 or 3 days ago from a guy I've known in the hobby for about 15 years now, local guy. And he's like, I ran into him at the local show there last Saturday. He phoned me 3 or 4 days later, and he was blown away by how busy the Pokemon is. And he's into it with his son, but he's a sports card collector. He said, I was thinking about you. You should get into Pokemon because, you're personable and you get along with people, and you'd be really good at it. I'm like, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I have zero interest in it. So it just doesn't resonate. I'm not going in that direction. Logan Ward says, I like big bucks and I cannot lie. That's what a lot of the Pokemon people are going through right now. Greasy Pigeon says, never be throwing my money after Pokemoney. Foul Ball says, the hobby community has loners who have a hard time connecting with others. I know from experience. That's for sure it does. And I hope for Foul Ball and other people that, talking in these chat rooms is a social, experience for them and to fulfill some of those human social needs. David, can you speak to that? I know we did already, but your understanding as a rabbi, as a man of the people who, you serve your congregation, you listen to your congregation. What extent are online communities filling the need for social interaction over the last, since COVID?
I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, there's no substitution for the real thing, and it's nice to connect people online. But man, the quality of in-person relationship, in my experience, is superior. Right. And from this exact chair, I led our congregation. It's a good sized congregation, 600 families through COVID, and we held it together. But man, once we could get back in person, people came back, and there was tons of, we're going to be online. It's going to be hybrid. They want to spend big money. I said, let's just wait 6 months before we drop a lot of money on upping our tech. And sure enough, people need human connection, and it's great to be able to buy and sell and trade. But man, when I get to meet somebody who I first met on Instagram, but then I connect with him with the national, that's when it goes to the next level. I think about like the first time I met Matt, 1956 Tops guy, or you, Jeremy, or you, Leighton, and I'm looking forward to meeting you, Joe, or Iowa Dave. It's good to be able to connect online, but the real like stickiness, I think it still happens in person.
For sure. I think that for sure. But during the pandemic, when we couldn't, it was
Yeah.
it was a good holdover, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely positive.
for sure.
Yeah.
Hockey, a nice comment. I hold Leighton in the same esteem as Bobby Burrell. When they are educating on vintage, I listen intently and keep my mouth shut. Michael Stone says, I like that term, David, the uncommon he's referring to. I just picked up an ultra gold medallion of Kirby Puckett
Nice.
for $5.
Nice.
Yeah. David Kaplan says the Admiral's rookie card. How hot was that back then, David? We remember that. For sure we do. Sports card shorts. Yeah, separate floors. They had to move Pokemon upstairs. And Linda's first says, when I hear face of the hobby, so this is going back a few minutes in the show. When I hear face of the hobby, I think Kit Young, James Beckett, or Al Rosen. But I'm guessing I think you're dating yourself there on the Kit Young and Al Rosen. Well, Al Rosen's been deceased for a while. Kit Young, I don't know, Leighton, you know more about how involved he is, but James Beckett, to me, definitely fits that bill and, commands all of our respect. Of course, Leighton, Kit Young, still involved in the hobby? Where I feel like he was.
Yes, he comes to the National every year. And if I may, I want to share a very quick, funny story. I've told it before, but it seems applicable at the moment. So I graduated Rutgers College in 2000 and bought and sold cards and also worked at Johnson & Johnson to pay for school as I went. So when I graduated school, I had the opportunity, of course, to go into corporate America. As I graduated the School of Business from Rutgers, I decided to not do that and try to get a job in cards. And so the year 2000 did not look like it does today, where there's opportunities to work for eBay, auction houses, be your own dealer, whatnot. I mean, God knows the opportunities that did not exist back then. So anyway, I had a very short list of people that I was interested in working for, or that I thought maybe would hire me. And so one of them was Kit Young. And I remember calling up his office and got Kit on the phone, told him my credentials, said I have a resume ready to send you. He said, oh, no, I'll hire you. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I'm moving to San Diego. I couldn't wait to tell my friends and my family. And I said, oh, what's the starting salary? He said, salary? I'll give you $15 an hour. I said, I'm sorry. I think I maybe misunderstood you. How much did you say? And I said, oh, Kid, I'm sorry. I'm not able to move across the country for that. I'm looking for X. He goes, son, I can't hire you to sell vintage baseball cards for me and that. I'm like, all right. So long story short, I didn't work for him. And my first job out of college was working for Mark Murphy, the baseball card kid for 2 years before I went to Leon's.
Good story. I have heard it before. And so Kit Young, but he's still involved? Yeah, he is. Right?
Yeah, but I think that he's, coming to the National on an annual basis, and he's more of like behind the scenes. He's got Rob Rosen and a great team. But I think he's still involved in his business.
There we go. Stuke saw him at the Chicago National in 2023. Okay, couple more comments here I want to address. Linda's first has 128 watching. We're growing. I'm showing 189 on all platforms, guys. Now 132. Thank you, Linda's first, for calling out those numbers. Maybe we are growing here with SCL 2.0. Collector Creative says many of my friends who own brick and mortar card shops in the Denver area have been supported because of Pokemon the past 18 months. Very strong collecting community too, which is cool. And I'll say to that, if I owned an LCS, I would definitely sell the stuff, because why not? I mean, now you're just looking to sell products. So of course I would sell that too, but I would definitely much more. I would enjoy the sports side of the store way, way more. Vintage Card Collector says an increasing amount of TCG it shows is really starting to piss me off. The National really needs to take this trend seriously when admitting new vendors. Well, now we know it's pissing off Vintage Card Collector right there. And I mean, I just look at it like this. Never mind the National with their limited space, but I look at it like a card show. Are they filling it with TCG where they could otherwise fill it with sports vendors, or are there no other sports vendors to fill it with, so they're going to the TCG category? I just don't know the answer to that, but I guess we will find out. Leighton, thanks, buddy, for joining us. every
Thanks for
Saturday
having me,
night. Guys, check him out on Instagram, Leighton_Sheldon. Check out just_collect. Listen to Trading Card Therapy. He's doing some great interviews with hobby people. And also check out our new, well, it's not so new anymore. We've got 8 episodes of the Vintage Spotlight podcast. It has its own YouTube channel and podcast. Check it out. Episode 8 dropped just a couple weeks ago, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. Leighton, thanks for coming on. Good luck tomorrow with the rest of your buying trip.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Good to see you. Take it easy.
Take care.
Good to see you, pal. All right. So we've got lots of comments, guys, to the point where I'm kind of losing track of some of them. But so I'm going to just do a quick scan here. Yeah, thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. Vintage says, I'm a huge fan of Nat Turner because he's genuine and loves cards. He says, Michael Rubin, not so much. Foul Ball, YouTube chat is my hobby community. That's awesome. That's awesome right there. Hockey. I don't want there to be a face of the hobby. I just like listening to respectable and knowledgeable hobby folk. I think that's totally fair. Logan Ward says, dude set up across from us today at our local card show, had Pokemon and was 3 deep all day long. 3 deep, people in front of him all day long. Yeah, that's definitely something important. Michael Stone says, would you consider someone like Jeff Wilson the face of the hobby? I would on YouTube, because I think when you go to YouTube, you see Jeff Wilson. So I would think he is one of the faces of the hobby on YouTube. That, for better or for worse, I think that's the case. Michael Stone interested to hear who the chat thinks are the face of the hobby right now. I guess Michael Rubin and Nat Turner have to be on that list. I think so too. I do agree with that comment right there, Michael Stone. Okay, all right, David. We're gonna bring on Mike Sommer right away here. Mike Sommer, Wax Pack Hero. He's got a great account, mostly active, I would say, on the Twitter X platform. He does stuff on Instagram as well, but he has a podcast as well. And I listen to it, and it's a great podcast, guys. But David, you ready to bring on Mike Sommer? And we're gonna be talking about some base cards. So your uncommon comment will become part of.
Great.
It's gonna transition in. So
let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, Mike,
Absolutely.
you good to go? Good to go. Please welcome Mr. Mike Sommer, waxpackhero.com. He's got the website too. 2 Sports Cards Live 2.0. Mr. Mike Sommer, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. We did an episode, I don't know when, I don't remember when, Mike. It's a couple of years ago, I'm guessing, at this point.
I think it was about a year ago. I was looking in our kind of chat history. It was, I think, January or February of 24 was when I was on last.
Okay, so about just a year. Okay,
Yeah.
Good. Well, hey, I'm glad we're getting you back this time soon. Logan Ward says, I'm here for my boy, the Mike Sommer. And I want to read this comment from Mike Double B. Waxpack Hero was one of the first podcasts I ever found. It's been a pleasure to listen to Mike for the past 5 years. Sorry to hear you are pulling back in your content. Such a sultry voice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first, let's start with that, Mike. Let's hear that voice and tell us, are you slowing down the podcast content?
Yeah. So December, the end of December marked 5 straight years of putting out a weekly episode. At the beginning, it was 2 episodes a week. And I kind of made the announcement on that last episode of 2024 that I was going to be kind of scaling back and not committing to having a new episode every week. Just kind of felt like I was getting to the point where I only have so much to say. And, just kind of felt like I had kind of shared what I had to share about my approach to buying and selling cards on my 3 main platforms of ComC, Sportlots, and eBay. And, I've kind of felt like it was running its course and wanted to pull back to a point where I was only going to start to release episodes when I felt like I was more passionate about a certain topic, maybe do a series where there might be 2 or 3 episodes in a row, but I wasn't going to commit to necessarily having a episode come out every single week from here on out. So I had that episode it ended up being the 31st of December. Haven't had one since, but just earlier this weekend, I recorded an episode. So there'll be one coming out next week. So the podcast isn't ending. It's just not going to necessarily be weekly anymore.
Right. And I do remember listening to that last episode now that you've jogged my memory and thinking, oh, that's too bad. But I forgot, and I want to just take a moment and introduce you. If you don't know Joe Poirot and David Spinrad, guys, just say hello, because I love this opportunity to introduce and help curate more relationships. So guys, please say hello to each other.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a chance to be on a conversation together. Joe, I've heard you here with Jeremy over the last several weeks, and Dave, I've heard you on a variety of the different shows that you've been a guest on over the last year or two. So I'm familiar with you, but we've never actually had a chance to interact, I don't think.
Well, it's a pleasure, Mike, and a longtime listener of the pod, and I really like your approach. I actually, when I started getting back into the hobby, really the way I sort of built up my war chest was selling, very good condition 1979 Fran Tarkingtons out of my childhood collection, and then randomly you collect, and I get a bunch of commons, and I've actually built up my PayPal account $1, $2, $5 at a time, and so I actually listened and learned a lot from you, Mike.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. That's the type of thing that I enjoyed hearing so much about, and it's a story that I've continued to tell. But getting back in, when I got back in 2016, realizing that I wanted my hobby to be self-sustaining, and that's what I've been trying to share over these last 5 years is my approach to having a self-sustaining hobby, and just sharing what has worked for me, and hopefully it worked for some others. And Dave, it's great to hear that story of it working for you as well.
Yeah, kept my wife happy too.
Yeah. So, well, let's do this then, Mike. I'm gonna turn it to you, and guys, I'm gonna watch the comments and collect them for when this the on-screen discussion kind of slows down for a moment. But Mike, why don't we, what I want to hear from you to kick off your topic is, you listened, you were watching, whatever it was, last week's episode, we talked about base cards. I really am curious what was going through your mind when you were listening, and and how you were processing what we were saying.
Yeah. So what was going through my mind is, unfortunately, I would say it was a common occurrence, because there is this general thought within the hobby, within a lot of voices within the hobby, that base cards are junk, base cards are worthless. Why even have them in products anymore? No one wants base cards. But as we talk about with a lot of different hobby topics, there's certain people that don't want base cards, that focus on one aspect of the hobby, but there is a whole lot of people out there where base cards are their thing. Whether they continue to be set builders and they love to put together the different sets that come out each and every year, or whether they're player collectors who don't just want one of ones, they don't just want the best card of their favorite player, they want all the cards of their favorite player, and their collections and their player collections and team collections are focused around breadth and having variety and the different styles and different types of inserts and parallels and all of these types of things that go with base cards. There's this tendency we have to get in our own little bubble and think that our bubble of collecting is the only way to collect and the only thing that people care about. And when it comes to what I've learned over these last several years is, when it comes to the sports card world, there are still a whole lot of people who love base cards and love to collect base cards. And that's something that I've been able to capitalize on to help build my own collection, but also to help fill their collections as well.
I think you provide a great service. I know you use Sport Lots, you use ComC, you use some of these places where base card collectors go to find them, and you are delivering them what they need on those platforms. I think it's great. And you said, you used the word bubble, and you're so right. I think we have a human tendency to project how we see things and what we would do, how we would behave in certain situations upon everybody else. And even the best of us, and I'm not putting myself in the best of us, even the best of us can be guilty of that at times. I know I certainly have been, and I try not to be. So, I really liked your message that you sent me, because it, kind of, okay. And for the record, I don't remember what I said last week, so I might contradict myself here. I might not, but my true thoughts are, number one, well, a couple things. First of all, if base cards were truly worthless, I don't think the card companies would make them anymore. I think they'd find a way not to make them anymore. And they have done that with some products, and I don't think they'd keep producing them, but they know there's people who want them. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is that there are so many collectors out there who are not living on social media all the time, not showing everything on social media. There are people out there who want to fill those binders with those sets. Like you said, Mike, build that breadth for their collection. And so I think, where I was coming from was, I personally don't value them because I'm not going to put in the work and time to monetize them the way you do. I'd rather just give them to you and say, here, Mike, go find the right homes for these, and I'm going to like donate them to those people. You do the work, you make the money. I'd be happy to do that because I just don't collect them anymore. But I truly understand that there are people that do. So if I came off as offensive to base card collectors last week, I apologize to them. That was not my intention. So I'd like to just say that to those people because I respect the heck out of anybody who collects the way they like to collect.
Yeah, I think there's this recognition that's out there that, it's not that people don't realize that some people like those. It's what starts to bug me a little bit is when people just, they kind of view those base set collectors or base card collectors as a lower tier of collector because they're not cards that are worth thousands of dollars. And kind of where I was coming from in my message to you was more of the point of, hey, I'm never going to argue that, people should go out and buy base cards because they're going to be able to buy this star for $0.25. And in 10 years, it's going to be worth $100 and they're going to have all this appreciation. That's not the point. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you love to collect them, there's a market of people out there that are just like you and will be happy to collect these base cards with you. And if you're coming at it like me, who is trying to build a self-sustaining hobby, focusing on picking up collections and giant lots of these base and insert cards for fractions of a penny because people have that view that they're not worth anything, is a great opportunity to put in a little bit of work and turn those fractions of a penny into quarters and dollars and tens of thousands of dollars like I've been able to do over the last several years. Now, one of the things that I find it's been both financially rewarding and from a collecting perspective, very rewarding. Since I started selling on sport lots in 2016, I am just under 200,000 cards sold on sport lots. And at a minimum of 18 cents to $0.25 a piece, that's a pretty decent chunk of change that I've been able to turn into everybody else's discarded base cards into some pretty significant revenue that's been able to build my collection for free, as well as pay for some vacations and pay for a vehicle that we purchased recently.
Love it.
It's nothing to shake a stick at. So when people say there's no money in base cards and they're worthless, I was like, well, I've got tangible proof that they're not exactly worthless.
Nice.
It takes work though, right? And that's fine. You're willing to, I'm guessing you have a streamlined process that enables you to move these things in and out of the system really quick. If you're selling on ComC, there's no shipping, scanning. If you're selling on sport lots, do you have to ship them yourself or is it more like a ComC platform?
Oh yeah. There's definitely work. There's no doubt about it. You will never hear me say that if you want to deal in base cards that there's no work, because especially on sport lots, you're doing the organization to then, get them in order to be able to get them listed. When an order comes in, you are doing the pulling, packing, and shipping. That is on you, and there is work that goes into it. That is 100% the case. But there's a piece of it too where I enjoy that work. I enjoy going through the cards, seeing the cards. There's something about it that I enjoy the organization for some reason. I'm not sure what it is about that, but I enjoy that organization aspect too. And so there is work that goes into it for sure. But, over time, I find it rewarding. Process, you asked about process. Yeah, that is another key piece. You've got to be organized. You've got to have a process to be able to do this, the pulling and packing and shipping on a timely basis, using a label printer, using an organization system that allows you to find what you're looking for quickly. That is key, especially when you're at the point where you've got 400,000 to 500,000 cards listed. That is for sure an important piece to be able to go in and be able to fill those orders. So you've got to have space and you've got to have some time and you can do that with kind of a system that helps you do that a little more efficiently.
Well, good for you for that. Well, first of all, just off topic, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're over 200 people watching right now across all platforms, including about 130 on YouTube. So thank you, everybody, for coming on. I want to turn the mic over to Joe for a moment. Give Joe a chance to, just share your thoughts. You've been listening very astutely, Joe, for a while. Unless you've been distracted by no, you're not watching the basketball game, so you're good. What are you picking up? What's going through your mind as you're listening to this conversation, Joe? Where are you at on this base card thing and, relative to the discussion from last week?
Yeah, I mean, I find value in base cards because for me, and this maybe touches a little on what Mike was saying, it's a very tactile experience for the most part. I am not even putting them in penny sleeves unless they're, of a star player. And I really appreciate being able to kind of move through them. It takes me back more to a childhood experience where the cards are directly touching your fingers, your hands. And that kind of getting back to what David was saying earlier, there's a soothing aspect to that is valuable to me, not in a sort of commercial way or monetary way. I would also say that I am always interested in what the latest releases are. And I hadn't ripped any wax, so to speak, in probably going on 2 years. And I made it to Target maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I got a few NFL Prism value packs. And even though I didn't hit, a Jaden Daniels, I really enjoyed looking at the new card designs and also reading the back. And so what base cards do for me oftentimes is they're almost like a scouting report for a certain issue and kind of what's going on. And so I might see, a Christian McCaffrey card and I'll keep the base card and that'll be a little bit of a memory of an opening experience. But then I might say, you know what, this would look really good in a red prism, right? And so then I'll launch my collecting journey in a direction that sort of sprung out of the base card experience, but goes into something that's maybe a little bit more in the wheelhouse of where I get more juice as a collector. So I can't say that like base cards are the end all be all to me, but they definitely provide me with meaningful hobby experience.
Jordan Cardman here speaks to what you were just saying, Joe. Base card design is more important than ever as the parallels of them are basically blinged out base cards in design. I think that's an astute comment. Now, one thing that I think I've been misthinking about these discussions, or what, I haven't been thinking straight during these discussions, because when I say base card, I'm sort of thinking commons. I feel like for some reason, and my fault, I have confused the term base card with the term common, because a base card can be, as someone said it in the chat here, it was Mike Zier says, "Hey Mike, ask Jeremy if those 4 blown up cards on his wall are base cards." Well, first of all, Mike Zier, there is more than 4. There's 20 of them up there. So you guys just never get to see the top row, because otherwise I'm down here,
Nice.
So there's 20 of them up there actually. And yeah, when I think of base cards, I think I'm thinking of commons from, all the way from the early years, right, all the way through. I don't consider, yes, a Michael Jordan, a Wayne Gretzky, a Tom Brady base card is a base card, but it's not a common. And this ties into, David's a little bit, I think, to David's terminology of the uncommon. So, when I say that, Mike, does that make you feel any better about what I said or about what I say, knowing that, I'm not pooping on base cards. I'm more, in my mind, don't see value in commons. Do you draw a line between base cards and commons? And I also want to hear from David on this, just to get his perspective too. But I got to go to you first, Mike.
Yeah. So the shorter answer is no. I don't draw a distinction. A good number of that 400,000 to 500,000 cards I have listed on Sport Lots are commons. One of my small PCs is a common. Thad Bosley used to be an outfielder for the Cubs, Angels. He was the top of the first 1986 cello pack that I ever got. And He's only got about 60 to 70 cards out there. They're all pretty much commons, but I've gone in and bought every single one that I can, and I'm down to only needing one of his cards that's ever been produced. But he's a common, but he's part of my collection that is meaningful and I am passionate about. And so in the broad sense, yes, commons are not ever going to have a high amount of value. But to me, who finds value and am passionate about one of those players who was a common, I wouldn't want to let those cards go. And I'm sure glad they're made, and that they were made there in the late 70s and 80s. So, so yes, again, they're never going to be as desirable. Thad Bosley is not going to sell nearly as fast as a base card of Michael Jordan. No, I'm never going to argue that. But there is still a market for those. There are still collectors for those people who are commons. And so you're still going to see me be happy to pick those up as well in these big collections, and find the collectors who do feel passionate about those players, even the lesser known ones, and those quote unquote commons.
Oh, man.
Well, yeah, go ahead, David.
And Mike, you had me at Thad Bosley. Was he a Cub and a White Sox? Was he one of those guys?
Yeah, Angels, White Sox, Cubs, Royals for a little bit, and Rangers, I think, towards the very end of his career. Yeah, he played for a variety of teams there from the late 70s through the late 80s.
I remember him. Stratomatic baseball. I remember Thad Bosley. So sometimes, going back to kind of what Jeremy is trying to raise up, that distinction between a base card and a common. I love the design of cards, and I love the photography. So to me, a common player can still have an uncommon card. And one of the things that kind of bums me out about ultra modern, the more desirable brands, are they just show the player with the design. I like the background. And being a Bay Area guy, I don't know what the story is exactly. I've never really done a full dive. If you look in cards, particularly in the 70s, there is a huge disproportionate number of baseball cards that were the photography either happened at Candlestick or the Coliseum. Crazy, right, Joe? I don't know the story. I need to do some homework on it. So I love the background. I love the photo. I have a card here that is a guy no one has heard of except for his mom. But this is an incredible card I picked up. A catcher from the Braves, 1973 Topps, Bob Didier. Probably never heard of this guy. I never heard, but look at this amazing picture. The guy sliding in, making the play at the plate. That's an incredible card. So absolutely uncommon. I know this costs way under $5, and I love having a binder of just awesome, cool cards to look at. So sometimes it's just a regular guy who has a super cool card.
Awesome. I mean, it's well, the hobby is so much bigger than social media, and that's what we are hearing right now, and that's what the chat is telling us. I mean, I've got 17 comments I've put aside here, guys. I'm going to go through a couple of them, and I just want to see you nodding away as you agree, that sort of thing. Our friend Matthew, 1956 Topps guy, says base cards are key. One thing I love about opening 89 Topps baseball is that there isn't a chase. I get to relive my first love of cards without worrying about getting a good card. And that's the way it was back then, for sure. Foulball says Mike was the first to block me on Twitter. Yeah, sorry, I forgot that was one there. But I'm sure you had a good reason, Mike. I'm sure you had a reason anyway.
That is a true story.
Oh, you remember this? You know what it was?
Yep.
Okay, good. Brett Miles says, great words, Mike. Player collector here. Logan Ward says, are you still a collector if you don't like base cards? I think you certainly are. I think you can collect how you want, right? I think it goes both ways, Logan, on that, and I'm sure you'd agree with that. We did that one. But Mike Zier, I think he did go on to say later, that's what you were getting at, Mike. Yeah, I mean, and that makes good sense to me. Ben Burrow says, I think there's a pretty good argument that base rookie cards are the most recognizable to the largest group of people. Check. Look at my wall. That's all that right there. How many casual collectors care about the Luka Black 1 of 1? Well, I think that's a good point. I think people, the way he just said it was how many care. I think they care because it's interesting to see what they sell for, if you can find out, to see what they look like, find out what hands they end up in. But the fact of the matter is only a small percentage of the hobby can afford those. So they might care, but they can't afford, so they care less. Laura says you can't have anything else higher without its base. And I think Michael Stone made a common comment. He said, without base cards, what would the chase cards be? Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. The only thing I say to that is that, you know, the chase would be the numbered cards, the better the cards with jerseys, patches, autographs, and that. But again, I am not advocating for removing base cards from products or the hobby altogether. Jeff Hart says it used to only be base cards. In the modern hobby, it's just become more complicated to collect, no matter what level you are at. Brett Miles said there are thousands of fun projects one could start as a collecting project that utilize only base cards, yet so many people talk about being priced out of the hobby.
Totally.
Like this is
There
that
it is.
that's the right that
Yeah.
David, go. You're thinking something?
No, that's it. It's just a lack of imagination. If you can't find an incredible way to collect, you're not thinking deeply enough about this amazing hobby. There's an infinite number of directions. I actually do have this weird fantasy of getting all the cards ever photographed at Candlestick Park, right? Like there's no end to this, and none of it has to cost a lot of money. And in fact, if you want to have a higher end card here and there, it makes it so much more affordable. If you have super, super, super bottom of the barrel, low end cards, then you're not breaking the bank. And once in a while, you get a big boy, and you still get the thrill of getting cards coming in and building your collection. It's a great way to do it.
100%. Hockey Huck says Jeremy's favorite comment is Luciano Borsato. Yeah, that's so funny. I used to see that guy play hockey. I know exactly who you're talking about, hockey. Michael Stone, PC's Kent Herbeck. He is probably considered a common Minnesota Twins legend.
Yeah.
Todd McDonald says, I think without base cards, all the sets would start to feel the same. I think we would have a hard time gaining new young collectors without them. Yeah, the second half especially. I think even though, you know, young collectors these days, they covet I say that based on what I see online mostly. I'm sure there are young kids out there that are doing binders with their fathers, with their mothers, with their sisters and brothers as well. So we have to not project so much, and also not just be so tunnel vision that what we see is what is out there. I'm very critical of that commentary when I hear it in my own head. I'm critical of that type of commentary, and I'm gonna try to I'm gonna endeavor to be better at that myself and not do that. If I do, please point it out so I can rethink and not be like that.
Hey, Jared.
90 ball cards. Oh, go ahead, David.
You go ahead. I'll come after.
Well, I was just gonna read another comment. So if your comment was related, I want you to go.
It's related to a comment, but I don't want to interrupt. Okay. You want me to go?
Okay.
All right.
Really?
Rock Latex was loving on the 87 Kevin Mitchell, which is absolutely one of my uncommons, and it's right here in my binder. He's talking about the dirt getting kicked up on this card. This card is so awesome. Nice. And I just happened to have it here. That's all. I had a moment.
Very nice. No, dude, I'm glad you did that and shared that. 90s b-ball cards. Sometimes common base are the hardest to find for set collectors, and like Mike is saying, there are some people that collect common players that want their base cards too. Yeah, I mean, and the card companies have done a good job of supplying that over time. And Jeffrey Hart says Burbank Sports Cards has lived the mantra of base cards matter and is the backbone of their business. And that's, you know, very similar to what Mike Sommer is doing, just without the shingle that Burbank Sports Cards has in Burbank, California. But I think that those are all really, really good points there. So, Mike, a lot of comments there. Any response, feedback, commentary on what you've just heard?
No, I think that hits on it. You know, one of the pieces that I would go off of a little bit is, you know, that idea that you know, that people don't recognize or think that those high-end cards are the only thing, or even this idea that kids these days don't want base cards anymore. They want the big cards. Or I see kids with Zion cases and they're, you know, $2,000 cards that they're carrying around. And again, there is truth to that. And there are people that love those cards, and there are kids that love those cards, and that's great for them. But I think part of us as we content creators contribute to some of that mindset on a broad scale, right? There are featured Instagram reels and featured posts with the Paul Skenes $1 million card. This is the card that everybody's got to get from, from whatever product it's coming in. Like all of those big name cards are what gets the popularity. That's what gets the articles written. That's what gets those things. That's what gets pushed in front of people. And so some more casual people, that's the perception that they have, is this is the only thing that is worth collecting. This is the only thing that should be chased. Other people just get that reinforced so much that they assume just because that's what they're hearing, that's all that people are after. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I love to hear the content creators who are telling the stories of player collectors who are super collecting some random player, or people who are building an entire set run of Allen and Ginter or Topps Heritage or Topps Flagship or whatever that might be, because it just highlights that there are, like we've talked about earlier, there are so many different ways to collect, so many different projects and side projects that somebody could have. Some of them very focused on a particular parallel with a low serial number, some with a focused on a parallel that has 999 copies, and some with just pure base cards. And that's great. But there is a way to collect for people at all different price levels. You just can't get pigeonholed into, there's only one type of card has value, or one approach to collecting has value and the others don't.
Yeah. To the beginning of what you were saying, it made me think like, that kids do, some kids do like to covet and pursue, and they might dream about, fantasize the big stuff. But when I give away common cards, base, not just commons, I'll give away stars as well. But when I give away base cards on Halloween in my neighborhood, the kids' eyes light up, right away. Before they've even looked at they're just like, hockey cards, because I'm in Canada, it's hockey cards. I'm the hockey card house. I have been for 15, 20 years now in the neighborhoods I've lived in. And I love that I'm the hockey card house. It's so much fun, and they love them. So some kids do, and I would say more kids, especially those that aren't like just totally immersed in the hobby, like some others are, or like we three are immersed in it. So here's a comment, kind of looking at the other side. I haven't read it all yet, but the loud collector Phil says, men like to flex. Premium cards allow us to do so. I love base cards, but it's not a flex. Above my pay grade, but I think it's more psychology. LOL. So, anybody want to comment on the desire for men to flex, to show off, to brag, to, all that kind of stuff? I mean, I don't know anyone that is going to admit to doing that, yet we see it all the time. I want to go to you, Joe. Because I saw a comment on the chat that kind of threw me off. Someone said you've been talking. Talk about that. What do you think about the flexing nature of the hobby? And is it like I don't think that's what it's all about. It's not about. David, you're grinning. I want to hear from you too on this. But Joe, what do you think about that comment from Phil regarding the desire to flex?
So I come from a literary background, and the text that comes to mind is Don Quixote, who was not exactly a hero in the traditional sense, but in his mind, he was incredibly heroic. And actually, through the power of imagination, which David was mentioning earlier, he brought the world along with him into his heroic adventures, to the point where he went from a madman to someone that people were responding to as if he were truly the hero in the adventures he was imagining. I think, there's probably a parallel there in the collecting world. If you believe it, I mean, it really is our own creation. It's you can flex and feel great about it. You can also flex and not feel great about it. But if you're feeling great about it, whatever you're flexing, it's a win. And I think that's just kind of magnifying what David was saying. I think we need more imagination, personal imagination, our individual imagination in our collecting journeys, and not sort of the sheep mentality of imitation and I've got to do what these other people are doing. No, you don't. You can make meaning in your own way, and you probably should. And it can fit into your budget. It can fit into your background. your family background, your geographical background, all these other areas to be just right for you.
Yeah, well said, David. You wanna comment on that, and then we're gonna transition from David. And David, it's been great having you on,
Same.
and we'll have you on again. We're going to transition from you to Christina shortly. Christina, I see you. Give us about 5 minutes. I want to do some comments before we bring you on. Mike, you're going to stick around, but David, kind of give you an opportunity to sort of wrap up your segment.
Yeah. Yeah, first I'd thank you for elevating the discourse, Joe. That was awesome, bringing Don Quixote, and we're all just the stars in our own movies, aren't we? You know, I was thinking about flexing, and I was thinking about the adage that that real power whispers, and how many times has actually the biggest baller in the room, you know, said nothing at all. So when someone's like flexing, like this is worth a Tesla, it's probably not going to age well. And that the collector Brady who was on with Leighton, like he was pretty low key as he was kind of breaking down a multi-million-dollar collection, right? So, you know, nothing wrong with the flex, but I don't really like. Doesn't move me. So I just wanted to say thanks very much. What an incredible conversation. I'm really looking forward tomorrow to having the slightly surreal experience of listening back to Sports Cars Live as I walk my dog in the morning. I want to say thank you to you, Jeremy and Joe and Mike. It's been great to put the face with the voice for the first time. Such like a buttery soft voice. And I wanted to just give a real special shout out of appreciation to Brandon. He's on IG as Totally Certified Die Cut. When I first got back into collecting, I'm mostly a modern guy, but I can appreciate the aesthetic beauty and the design of modern, ultra modern cars. They don't get me in a way that really held me as a collector, except for one design, 2020 Obsidian. I love black cards for some reason. I always just love a black sports card. The 2020 Obsidian Football has a 20 card insert set called Supernovas. And they come in all different parallels, including the 1-of-1 electric etch blue finite. And I've been chasing this set for almost 4 years. And I have 18 of the 20. I have 9 1-of-1s. And I have 9 out of 5. And I'm still hunting for the Brady and the Herbert. And Brandon reached out to me. I had the out of 5 Patrick Mahomes. And he reached out to me and he said, and like I didn't know he had the 1-of-1 electric etch blue finite of Mahomes. He reached out to me and I knew he had this card. He said, hey, I have this card if you're interested. And I never had that experience of, if you're open, I'd be very excited to have the opportunity to add the card to my collection. And he was just a super menschy guy, worked out a very smooth and easy deal. So I'm really excited to get to share. I have the 1-of-1. I'm super stoked. I just think that's a beautiful like Art Deco design and really love it. And happy and excited to get this and share it a mail day with everybody tonight on Sports Cards Live. So thank you, everybody.
A little flex to finish off the show, David.
Well, my little time, no one collects these but me. Who cares?
You know what? I think we've got to kind of delineate between the flex and the sharing. I mean, if you think every share is a flex, then maybe look in the mirror because they're not all flexes, but many of them certainly are. David, before you go, I just wanted to share a comment with you that did come in here. Dan's Vintage said, Rabbi David, nicest man in the hobby. So great to see him back on Sports Cards Live. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. CRT said, I have more common player tattoos than Hall of Fame players. He's got the sleeves, the T206s. Brett Miles says it's a two-way street. We as hobbyists need to filter what we see and hear. That's on each individual. FOMO can be a challenging thing for the young new collector. Well said, Ben Diamond. Don't compare yourself to others. If you succeed in doing this, tell me how. He's quoting the unknown. Dan's Vintage says, I set up at a card show today and sold primarily vintage commons to set builders, moved tons of cards. Congratulations. And congrats to the people that filled those spots in their sets. That's a service you provide. Brett Miles says, Teddy Roosevelt once said, comparison is the thief of joy. I totally agree. Mookie says, everyone's just giving us all these great quotes. Mookie says, the man who knows doesn't say, and the man who says doesn't know. And Mark Hoyle, welcome to the show. All right, David, thank you again for joining us tonight. Thank you. We'll see you again in due course.
All right, be well. Enjoy the games tomorrow, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Hang out.
All right. Carvin Chung in the house. Carvin Chung says, very subtle, rated LOL. I think you also, is this a flex now? Good stuff. Okay. David, have a great rest of your night. Great rest of the weekend. And thanks again. All right, guys. Mike, how you hanging in there, buddy?
Doing good.
Joe, all good there? Did any spoilers on the basketball game?
I found out, I've got my crew, they're blowing me up, but the Warriors lost. So anyway,
okay, I'm sorry. Right. I'm sorry to hear. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's go. Before we bring Christine on, Mike, there was a lot there at the end. Anything going through your mind? Any notes you want to mention before we transition to Christina?
No, nothing else. Like I said, I think my whole point with the whole thing is we got to make sure we don't get into this bubble where one type of collecting is the quote unquote the only way to collect, and just have that recognition that there are people that love the expensive cards there, but there are a lot of people that still love those more inexpensive base cards and feel very passionate about their collections that are focused on those types of things. You're never going to necessarily get rich, but if you do want to approach it like I do and use that as a tool to have a self-sustaining hobby, it can be a way to do that and generate some extra income and cash flow to help cover the cost of those cards you want to keep and kind of level up too. So there is a lot of opportunity there too for people that want to approach it like that as well.
Right on. Okay. And final comment before we bring Christina on. Chris C says base cards aren't the issue. The overgrading of them is. Now that is a whole other discussion, Chris. Whole other discussion, but I think it's worthy, but not for right now. We are going to bring on Miss Christina Thorson of Card Ladder. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to come on. She is good. Let's bring her on. Christina, welcome back to Sports Cards Live. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back, Jeremy. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Mike, amazing to see you again. And Joe, my teacher friend, how are you?
Great to see you, Christina. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, for sure. It's an honor and privilege to be here as always.
Well, it's good to have you. It's been a while since you've been on. And you know what? I want to start by saying, everybody, Christina is the COO of Card Ladder. And I'm going to shout this out too. There is a Sports Cards Live affiliate link in the video description where you can, if you would like to join Card Ladder, use their services as I do on a daily basis, and Sports Cards Live will earn a small commission, and Card Ladder will earn a wonderful customer, and so on and so forth. Christina, you know what? I'm just going to ask you this to start. How is life at Card Ladder? How are you doing? How are you enjoying the entrepreneurial venture?
It's amazing. Like I'm gonna humble brag for a minute, something that we all know Hoj won't do, but life is blessed over here. Yeah. He'll get some strays this episode, I'm sure. But I, as you know, Jeremy, had a job that I was in academia prior to, I was in research compliance prior to Card Ladder launching, and I hated my job. Like every day I would wake up and I'd be like, ugh, I have to go to work. Like every Sunday I would be like, oh, here comes another week. And now I literally wake up like a kid on Christmas morning and I'm like, I get to go to work today. I get to do something that's really amazing. And I get to talk to collectors about cards and help them in their collecting journey. And I get to speak with amazing content creators like you, three sitting on the stage with me today. And it's just, I couldn't wax poetic more about how honored I am to be able to live, exist, and work in this industry.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I know you know, we've sat together in food courts at various with Joe and you and me and Chris and Josh, and we've hung out, we've broken bread together. It's all just a wonderful community, as we talked about early on in this episode with Rabbi David Spinrad, the rated rabbi. But one thing I want to tie in what you do at Card Ladder a little bit with what Mike does with Sport Lots and selling commons, because Mike, I'm curious. Like, I use Card Ladder all the time. I use the sales history feature regularly. I find it very helpful, and I just I'm used to it. I love the user interface and all that. Mike, in your business, card business, are you using comps? Are you looking for things, or like, and at the common level, is that something that you need, or is it much more at the common base level? Is it, and Mike, I also want to, is that all you do is base and commons, or you do others? You're shaking your, so just speak to that for a moment, and then we're going to get to the crux of Christina's appearance here.
Yeah, no, I do a lot of base and insert cards, because like I said, that has been the opportunity to find these for super cheap, because as many people have that conception that they're not worth anything. So when I'm looking at a collection and there's a nice piece of vintage, or there's a nice section of some other more high value type stuff, I'm able to get the 30, 40, 50, 100,000 base cards for almost nothing, for a throw in, right? But I'm able to then turn that into a lot. So that is not all that I do. That is not all that I sell, but it is a big piece of what I sell. So I don't use Card Ladder for base cards. I don't use Card Ladder for those types of things, other than occasionally the graded component. If you want to see and understand more about the populations and the values of some of the graded base cards, then yes, I do. Most of what I'm using Card Ladder for is when I'm creating content and I want to talk about values of cards that are being sold, values of cards in different types of collections, or different player collections, or especially the market industry pieces of Card Ladder that talk about the aggregated results. That's how I'm using Card Ladder. It's more from my content when I'm writing for the blog at Waxpack Hero, or when I'm writing for SI. Just today, I spent about 2 hours on Card Ladder looking up a bunch of Barry Sanders cards, as I was doing a comparison of an article that Beckett put out in 1998 with the top 20 most valuable Barry Sanders cards, and what does that look like today? And there are some surprising differences. It's not a one-for-one of what was the most popular Barry Sanders card in 1998 or most valuable is not necessarily the most valuable today. Notably, I'll just throw this out there as a teaser, but and I know this is going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but the PMG 1997 PMG Barry Sanders was only the 8th most valuable card. The PMG Green was the 8th most valuable Barry Sanders card in 1998 at a value of $560.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't think that the 2025 rank, I think that has far surpassed that and has become the most valuable card. And so it's kind of that perspective of what's popular today may not necessarily be popular 20 years from now. And the types of inserts or parallels that are hot today may not be what holds weight. There may be one of those other ones that is not as, or more overlooked today, that may become the PMG of the 25 years from now. So anyway, that was a lot of fun. But again, that was how I was using Card Ladder today. I spent a couple hours on the site doing that. So
let's go around the table. Joe, did you use Card Ladder today? How do you use it? Because I know how I use it. We've heard how Mike uses it. How about you?
I use it day. I use it at night. A lot recently, I've been using it for the deep vintage baseball stuff, especially as I've been kind of in an ongoing project of converting old SCD, GAI, and also even some BVG slabs into SGC slabs. And so just sort of looking at like what the value proposition is for recent sold, T206 cards or T205 cards, sometimes commons. So it's hugely helpful. That information isn't always easy to track down, but Card Ladder makes it easy. So I'm very appreciative.
All right, let's wrap up the Card Ladder infomercial and let's get to Christina now. Christina, I put on the thumbnail, I put the question, what pisses you off about the hobby? Because, I want to, and it's not, well, listen, I'm going to reframe it as, what stresses you out about the hobby? What we talked about community. We're talking about base cards, things that make people happy for the most part. Although Foul Ball says right here, hobby community can be mean too. It's not great for everyone. And that's true. Just like any social environment, it's not going to be healthy for everybody. But I hear you. But, for you, Christina, not for you. On the other side of that discussion, kind of, momentum of happy, jolly, we're all wonderful community. We all love base cards. We all love collecting. There's a lot of things that piss us off in this hobby. So I'm just going to ask it the way I put it on the thumbnail. What's pissing you off about the hobby lately, Christina?
I have 3 things to talk about. You told me what this was, and I immediately responded with, Jeremy, you're trying to get me in trouble. So everyone who watches Crossover knows I can rant and rave with the best of them, but or has ever spoken to me at a show or on DMs or anything. I'm a very blunt and honest person. But the 3 things that I would like to call out right now are hunting a rainbow for 4+ years. That stresses me out. The fact that there are 46 parallels in the rainbow that I'm currently hunting and have been hunting since approximately June of 2021, when I got the first one of one of the 3 one of ones that are in this set. There are 46 parallels. I have 45 of these parallels and 3 of the printing plates of this set. And I know where the 4th printing plate is. Maybe one day it'll make its way into my PC, but at the moment, the deal is a no deal on my end. And being I feel like I'm a broken record. I feel like every few months I just like make a post and I'm like, hey guys, if you're going to card shows, please look out for this one card, please. So that's frustrating and stresses you out. But I actually completed a 2017 rainbow of Select this past summer, right after the National. And the joy and completionist of the feeling of completing a project was just so incredible that it made me reset some of my stress for the 2020 Prism Rainbow, and just made me think about how long the journey has been for both of those rainbows. And one day I will get there with that 2020 Prism Fast Break Neon Green out of 5 Maxi Kleba that is somewhere out there in the world, maybe in a box, maybe in a 5-row, probably in some kid's binder.
Maybe on Mike Sommer's Sport Lots account. You just never know, right?
No, I've already checked for her. I know I don't have it.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Well, Christina, I have to say, so far, 1 of 3, I'm not getting you in trouble. So let's see if I'm going to be successful with number 2 or 3. Let's see what you got.
Okay, number 2 is PC taxes. I don't know if anyone else.
Elaborate.
Yeah. PC taxes. So a PC tax is when someone finds out that you PC a certain player or set. Yeah, Joe knows where I'm going here with this. And they find something that they know your collection needs. So they decide to charge you a PC tax. This frustrates me because when I find a card for a collector that I know, anyway, I hope that I understand everyone needs to make money and work, and everyone's in this hobby for different reasons. But PC taxes really piss me off. As a true-blooded American, no taxation without representation. And I just will leave it there. If you guys have any stories of that.
So I'm 0 for 2 getting you in trouble, first of all. So I think you've done a really good job how you've approached this. But that's a good one. I mean, that one, like the rainbow is funny. Brett Miles said, only in the hobby can rainbows be seen as a negative LOL. I think that's true. Foul Ball said, if card ladder was free, I would use it. And I just say, okay. But, if dining at the fanciest steak restaurants were free, I would dine there too. Or if driving a Lamborghini was free, I'd be driving a Lamborghini, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd trade in my GMC Terrain for a freaking Lamborghini in a heartbeat if it was free. But everybody who produces something and provides a service, I believe, is entitled to make some money. We don't go to work for free. And Foul Ball, I'm certain that you don't work for free either in your job. Christina?
I do just want to point out there is a free component of Card Ladder. So hopefully you can find use of that. And then we do provide and have since launch in June of 2020, a 7-day free trial so that everyone can test it out and see if it works for them before ever having to pay a penny. And that was a big sticking point for all of us when we launched, that we wanted to make sure people weren't having to pay to play. They could give it a try before they had to commit to buying anything.
A trial, which is very, very, very fair, I would say, for sure. Sports Card Shorts here says, Christina, just keep your PC a secret. What? I mean, that means you might never find the card.
I will. So I agree with that, except in about January of 2023, I was 2 cards down from completing the parallel rainbow. And the way that I actually got the bronze out of 20 was that I was posting about these 2 cards I still needed for the rainbow, and a kid in Australia was at a hobby shop and he watched another kid who was 16 rip a pack of fast break in shop, and the kid hit the bronze out of 20. And the person who watches the crossover immediately said, I know the girl who will pay you for that card. So while I agree, like, sometimes keeping your PC a secret is the way to go, sometimes you need the community to help you hunt, because otherwise you're not going to find those cards. And
I mean, let's face it. I know people know a couple types of cards I like. I get DMs. I'm not going to say every day, but, every second day, with just people sending me posts, just sending me a post. I just say thank you, whether I want the card or not. Thank you for keeping me in mind, because I might not have seen that myself. Half the time I've already seen it, half the time I haven't. I'm grateful in both cases for that. Joe, you have the same thing happen here or there? What do you think about putting your PC out there so that people could either try to gouge you, or the other side is people can try to help you? Because Christina, there's both sides of it, right? There's people that are going to want to help you genuinely because they're your friends, and there's people that are going to want to make money off you because that's what they do. They make money on cards, and sometimes those two circles on the Venn do cross over. No pun intended on crossover, and you've got a friend who's trying to make money off you. Yeah.
And for those people, like, I do offer finder's fees. Like, if someone's like, no, I just want to connect you, I don't want to play middleman, buy the card for cheap and then sell it to you. Like, I do, like, provide a service, like, fee of thank you for connecting me to this person, because without you, I wouldn't have at least known about the card immediately, if not ever. Because who would have thought to put that card on eBay? But yeah.
Joe, what do you think of this whole discussion? Like, should there be a PC? And I want to get to your number 3 here, Christina, but this number 2, I'm really interested in. Joe, what do you think about that? Like, do you expect to pay a markup when somebody finds a card for you? Like, let's say somebody was at a card show and they know you're willing to spend $200 on a card. There's a price tag of $150 on it. They buy it for $150 and say, hey, here you go. I got it for you. It's $200. Are you even going to ask them what they paid for it? Are you just going to give them the $200 because that's what you are willing to pay for it? And if you knew that they made $50 off you, would you care?
Yeah, I mean, my first instinct to what Christina's bringing up is that I would want it to be just the opposite, that somebody wants someone that appreciates the card to have that into their, enter that into their collection. And even people I don't even know at card shows, when I've mentioned to them, oh, I grew up in the Bay Area, I love Steph, like this guy I didn't even know, I don't remember his name. I'd love to shout him out, but he gave me a great deal on a Steph card, just because he could tell I was authentically interested in adding it was a shoe card to my collection. And so that, I know I'm a little idealistic in that. So I suppose, in the world of, crass commerce, some degree of a finder's fee, but not in a gouging type of way. I mean, if somebody needs, to validate their time by, turning something over, make a little profit, that's fine. But I mean, it's a small world and it's a small hobby, and what goes around comes around. And there was something mentioned on the crossover last night, a point I quite liked, that putting cards into particularly like cards of some degree of note in people's collection that actually collect those players in a certain kind of way, keeps it out of what we might call the flippers vortex. And there is potentially value in that. I don't think that's what Christina's talking about. I don't know how many people are searching for the green neon Kleber, but what I'm looking forward to, Christina, is the day that you open that no huddle box or fast break box, sorry, and there's 3 of those cards in one flipping box, and it's just like, wait, would you be angry or would you be happy? I think you'd be happy, but yeah, my sense is it's a small world, and we should be more interested in helping fellow collectors out, especially if they're coming from a place of, authentic collecting sensibility.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, what about you? What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, so for me, I've got 3 people that I kind of, super collect or, try to get the rainbow, try to get everything that's out there. None of those 3 are big name players, right? So Thad Bosley, who I talked about, Tyrone Nesby on the basketball side, and then Norman Smiley on the wrestling side. And I am very open about who I collect and that I'm after any cards that are out there. Now I'm sure there's a couple that have come my way where the markup, they're harder to find, lower serial numbered, and I paid a little bit more. But these aren't expensive players for me, right? So, even for some of these out of 10s and out of 5s that I've had to pay, I'm still only paying less than $100, for some of these cards. And for me to put that together, I'm okay with that. But at the same time, I know there are people who've also said, hey, I've got 4 or 5 of those that you need. I know you really like them. Just give me this much and we'll call it good. And I know that was a little under market. And I know there are people out there who know that I like those folks and have stumbled across some on some of the more obscure websites or on some other deal that pointed those out to me that I never would have seen otherwise. And so by me sharing what I'm after, I've been okay with knowing that I might overpay a little bit on a few cards, for that tax, because I've been provided access to lots of other ones that I would have not seen or that I might have missed out on because it had just got listed on ComC or it just got listed on eBay. And I had a buddy point out, hey, this just went up. If you want it, you should, go check it out. So I'm more on that proponent of let people know what you're looking for and what you want to collect, because in the grand scheme of things, I think it's more of an advantage than a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well said. All right, Christina, I want to hear your third one, but I just want to provide a warning to everybody. We are going to be bringing on our next guest, Julian Lombardi from the Currency Project, very shortly. So, Mike, I want to first of all thank you for coming on. Thank you for your discussion in private chat about base cards and coming on and not taking anything that we said here last week offensively. And we certainly don't mean it. And I think that the service you provide by just making base cards available is a really valuable one, and you make a lot of people happy, and that's community right there. That's and I know it's not easy. You have a lot of work involved in that. So kudos to you, Mike, and look forward to having you back on here in due course.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, while I want to, propel the benefits of dealing in base cards and doing that, I'm also just as happy with people thinking they're worthless and continuing to sell them to me for fractions of a penny. So, is that double-edged sword? But no, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat. I always love having these conversations. It's always a good time to get together with folks and talk cards.
Thanks for coming on, pal. We'll see you again soon.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Mike.
All right, we're going to do some okay, Christina, let's do some comments and then go to your number 3, okay? And Julian, we're going to bring you on in a few minutes here, but I want to, first of all, Jordan Cardman, Christina in the house. Collector Creative, when you first came on, Christina, and talking about, how you love waking up, he says, that's the dream. Congrats to you and the team. And I mean, I agree, it really is. Logan Ward says the hobby community is amazing. And Foul Ball says, I love my job too, but it's not my hobby. It wouldn't be a hobby if I worked in the hobby industry. That's an interesting comment. I say that because I now work in this hobby and it's still a hobby for me. So I think you can do both. I think you can work in it and have it as a hobby. It really depends on the power of your brain to manage yourself and compartmentalize the two different roles you may have, or the two different activities that you do in the hobby. Christina, make sense to you?
Oh, for sure. I couldn't agree more, Jeremy. I think that there's definitely a obsessed gene that I have that works well, that I hobby and work in this industry, and I can understand why some people might feel like they never turn off. So they don't escape work because they just migrate into social media for cards, and then they talk about cards and it just never stops. But fortunately, I'm on the obsessed card collector side of that equation, and I don't get tired of it. I'm an avid reader, so I do shut off my phone every once in a while and do a 2-hour reading marathon, but I always come back to cards. 2 hours is usually my max of attention span away from the hobby at this point. Yeah
No, I think it's good to regulate that. So we're going to do some comments, and we're going to do some comments, then we're going to bring Julian on once we're done reading through some comments here. And Christina, I think you're going to be really excited because Julian, the Currency Project, you did a lot of work on card art and custom cards. By work, I mean you were interviewing artists and that back when you were doing Christina's Corner podcast. So I really plan tonight to have Julian kind of be on the show at the time that you are. But let's go to some comments here. Dan's Vintage said, PC tax is why I never ask dealers at shows for specific cards. Automatic increase if they have it. I think with many that, but Dan, that you have to do that when the dealer doesn't have prices on their cards. When they do have prices, you can ask, just watch if they rip the price tag off as they bring it out from under the table, right? Sports Card Shorts Basic was saying that Card Ladder is basically free with the PSA membership. I believe that to be true. Confirm, Christina?
It's the PSA Collectors Club does have a bundle where it is a discounted rate for both Collectors Club and Card Ladder Pro.
Depends on what PSA membership you are purchasing. Ben Diamond says the more you have, the more people will gouge you. I think if they know it, that rings true. Piece of the Game says Card Ladder is 5 stars. We use it in all of our stores and push customers towards the tool. Yeah, if you like something, you're going to talk about it. CRT Sports Cards, if your hobby friend is trying to pull a fast one on you, are they really a hobby friend? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Dan Vintage says, my finder's fee is community hunting for others. I think that's a really, nice way to go about it. He says, community hunters are the antidote to the PC tax. This is a whole episode, Dan. And Hockey says, I have a theory that collecting is on a spectrum. I could not agree more with that right there. Okay, Christina, let's bring on Julian, and you'll share number 3 with us.
Yeah.
Julian will be a part of that discussion, and then we'll talk about some card art stuff. Julian, you're good to come on? He is good. All right, everybody, please welcome Julian Lombardi of the Currency Project to Sports Cards Live for the first time. Although we did a short at the National. We did a small podcast at the National. But Julian, it's great to have you. How are you doing tonight? Welcome to the show.
We did. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Can you guys all hear me okay?
We got
Yeah.
you. We got
Okay,
you.
perfect.
Yeah, I want to introduce you to Joe, and I don't know if you know Christina or Joe, but you do. Christina's nodding. Joe, meet Julian. Julian, meet Joe.
Joe, nice to meet you.
I had a great time on your IG account today, going through all of your beautiful artwork. So I'm really excited that you're here.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for checking it out.
And I can see right behind you, Julian, a couple that basketball, and I can't tell who that is, but that's very similar to some of the art that we've seen on is that a Lajuan?
It is a Lajuan.
It is.
I wonder if it's backwards because of the direction of my phone, but yeah.
Could be. Well, go ahead.
It's actually based off of a card that I then painted and released, and I can't, it escapes me at the moment, but if you look through our cards, that image is in there somewhere.
Right on. So before we get into Currency Project and yourself, we have to finish up with Christina's third item, thing that pisses her off about the hobby on a very personal level. She's keeping it really within her own approach. She's been very careful not to offend here with these three. Let's see if number three maybe goes in a different direction. I have no idea.
I would also like credit Jeremy because you put it in the email and I felt like you were personally reminding me. And then Hoj made sure to text message me right before you put me on the air that there's no swearing on your show. And anyone who knows, I'm literally the daughter of a sailor. So I have a very bad potty mouth. And so
I love how Chris had to text you to remind you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I read a study that people who swear have higher IQs. I don't know if it's true or not.
I would
written by someone who swears a lot, probably.
I was worried about it too, Christina. So
okay, thank you, Julian. That makes me feel better. I actually picked this number 3, hoping that Julian would be on at the time that I discuss it, because it touches on things that we have had conversations about many times in the past, and that is the I don't want to say lack, but the reluctance to innovate in card design. I would like to bring back more artistry in cards, as well as get to know the artists themselves who designed the cards. I want them to be featured just as much. I always say, and this is what kind of started Christina's Corner, which was a spinoff of House of Jordans way back in the day, that I don't usually have art on my wall. I know I do like tonight, but like I don't usually have art on my wall. My art sits in my PC box, and this is my art. My cards are my art, and I just look at them when I want to enjoy something beautiful and then put them back in to protect them. And I kind of feel like we've been stepping away from that in card design on the manufacturer side. And I think that there have been some instances where they've tried things and it works for a little while, but maybe the project scope was a little too large, or maybe, I don't know. I don't know why it didn't take off, but I think that having innovators in the design of cards is extremely important. So it kind of pisses me off that we don't try more and just, like, reach for different avenues and test the waters. Like, even if it was a product that, it is more of a cheap product, so they're not putting a ton of money behind it, I think it would be good to stretch our wings a little.
Yeah, and one of the things that Well, a couple things come to mind for me there. First of all, Gene McLeod has joined Upper Deck, and I don't know that you collect hockey cards too much, but if you did and you were, although they've also done the Metal Universe that is not hockey specific, so there could be opportunities for you there. But, I know you're looking for other, more mainstream basketball sets and that kind of thing. But, it's almost too bad that she is with Upper Deck. But for us, the hockey collectors, we're very happy that she is there. Then the other thing is that we've seen, like, for example, Andy Friedman has his own set of Topps baseball cards with his own art. And so we have seen some of the card artists make their way into sports cards. Even there's in Series 1, I believe, Upper Deck Hockey, there is a Young Gun parallel that features a card artist's cards. And Luke the Cardist's card. Luke the Cardist, he made his way. He made his way through that veil from the card artist, the lone operator, into a contract with Upper Deck, just like Andy Friedman did. And so we are seeing some of that stuff out there. Does that encourage you, Christina?
It does. It definitely does. I think that Upper Deck, I mean, as soon as I found out that Jean was being hired by Upper Deck, I freaked out. She actually told me personally. And I remember being very excited. And then she started her job, and I thought it was public knowledge that she was working there. So I actually met someone at a card shop randomly, and when we spoke and I mentioned, because they were at Upper Deck, he was like, "How do you know that?" And I was like, she started working 2 weeks ago. And he was like, "Well, how do you know that?" And I was just so I definitely was very excited when she told me about that job. I've had the pleasure of interviewing her, and I consider her a mentor and friend in this industry, and personally a friend. And I've started collecting hockey. I'm nowhere near the collector of you, Jeremy, or ever dream of being. But
well, I've been doing it 40 something years. So
yeah, no, but I have dabbled in, and as a Stars fan, being in Dallas, I've picked up some Otter and Robo cards, and Lindell, I really like him too. So those are kind of my 3 PCs for hockey, and I dabble in that. But and then Topps, I think, is progressing towards giving recognition to artists in a way that hasn't been done really since the 90s. So I think that's amazing. But I feel like they're still fringe. Andy, you're good enough, but you have your own set. You're not in a set. So that kind of thing where it's just make it an insert. Why can't he design 10 cards of an insert set that is packed into a product?
Instead of a niche one-off Friedman type product. Yeah. Well, hey, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I wanted to ask Christina as a follow-up, what do you think's behind the lack of innovation? What do you see as the why the producers of cards are not innovating?
Christina, I'm just going to jump in quick and say it's because Carvin Chung is working for a distributor and not a manufacturer. Sorry, Christina, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know what that was in reference to, but okay.
Carvin is known as an innovator. That's why. He's out of the innovation business. He's in the distribution business.
Yeah. I think that it's a couple different things, honestly. I think that maybe brands going bankrupt in the 90s and early 2000s kind of scared some of them to move away from that and just recycle some ideas. I think a lot of cards look the same today, and that complacency maybe comes from they don't have real competition because they own the licensing for that sport. So the only competition they have is with the other products that they themselves are releasing. And I think that innovation stems from competition. So maybe that could be it. I also think that like even back in the 90s, like you didn't really know who Arena Design was. You just realized that they were like something magical was happening with 90s cards. And then we later discovered what exactly it was. It was like this design team that was just way ahead of the game and bringing components that they learned in the advertising business for Atlantic City and VIP invites into cards. And maybe we need to look outside the industry for those innovators. I'm not sure. I mean, I definitely don't have the answer. But I think that a little bit of everything sprinkled in makes a recipe for a stale bread.
Okay. No, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. I wanna bring Julian into this discussion a bit more now, and I want to, first of all, Julian, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of respond to what you've been hearing and get your thoughts on this, because what you're doing is there's different kinds of custom cards. You've got people who are cutting up cards to make a new card. You got people who are kind of creating a brand new thing. You guys take a very unique approach. Why don't you take a moment, just share your thoughts on what you've been hearing, and then I want you to tell the audience about what Currency Project is, because I find it very interesting. And then I'm going to show the piece that I purchased from the Currency Project. It's almost 4 years ago. It was 2021 when I bought my. So please, mic's over to you, Julian.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting that Christina brought this up, because as I was preparing for this, the topic that you said was the evolution of custom cards and card art. So I started thinking about that and taking a lot of notes, and one of them was, what has caused the evolution of this, and why the demand, and that was one of the things I came up with was that I think people are just tired of looking at the same thing. Like, you flip through your Instagram and it's the same flavor of the worst cereal that you have to just keep eating over and over again. And so it created a space for this opportunity for people to come in and create some ingenuity. And I don't think that's the only reason that card art has, gone to where it's gone to, but it's definitely, I think, a part of it. It's an opportunity that people see and that exists. So
when you say where it's gone to, where is it from your perspective? Where is card art right now?
I mean, that's a whole nother topic that we could go into, but
we talk about the evolution and just like, kind of where it's at. Like, I see the ones. Listen, back in the day, you had Card Killer, you had Donnie B, you had a few others. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I know I will inevitably. That I felt were kind of leading that charge, at least, in my tunnel vision, where I was consuming content and meeting people at shows. And then I haven't seen much from Card Killer. I actually happened to see a Donnie B post just today or yesterday. But then Currency Project. I've been following you guys for 4 years now. And then Piggy Banks came out of nowhere and started doing his thing. And now, you've got guys like Zach at Collector Creative, who produces a beautiful display piece. I'm going to show my Currency Project piece. It happens to be a LeBron James. This is the one that I purchased on eBay. These guys at Currency, I'll say it, Julian.
Yeah, sure.
The Currency Project, you guys paint, you take an existing card, you paint around the main subject with a design, maybe inspired by some traditional contemporary artist, and then you sell them on eBay at auction and let the market dictate what they're worth. And I've seen a card you guys just sold did like $1,200 US on your eBay account. A wonderful painted piece. And this is a lot of money. I've seen Piggy Banks pieces sell for thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah. And even Zach, Collector Creative, I've seen he sold pieces for $1,000, around $1,000 too. I got this a bit less than that, but I've seen that all happen. And the other thing that comes to mind now, when I ran into you guys at the National, you and your partner Abdul, you guys talked about, I don't know if I can say this, but you were working on something, packaging. I don't know where you're at with that, but anyway, back
Yeah,
over
yeah,
to
go
you. Back over to you. Just riff off all that, please.
Well, I think it shows a couple things. I think it shows that the market in cards is super healthy. I mean, if there's a demand for customization of cards, that means that there's a huge demand for cards in general. You know, like look at custom cars, custom shoes, custom XYZ. That means the market's got to be pretty big if people are looking for unique things. And so all of that just to me indicates a lot of health in the industry. I mean, we can start talking about different artists and different cards and all, then it becomes more nuanced. But I think big picture, when you say where has cards gone now, well, or card art or customization, it's just growing exponentially because there's the market for it, which is
Right,
not
because
a bad thing.
no, because
Yeah.
as the hobby grows and as collectors are exposed to more options for cards,
Yeah,
we might want something a little bit different. Like you might want to have, like for me, obviously I do. I bought these two
right.
pieces because I wanted them in my collection. Why? Because I like the people behind them. Because I
Yeah.
like the pieces themselves. Because I just think it's cool. And I didn't buy these things thinking like investment. I bought them to support and because I think they're just really freaking cool. You can say freaking on the show, Christina, by the way. You can say freaking, you can say hack. I bought them for collector driven reasons. And then I thought to myself, well, I see you doing more. Maybe this does go up in value. Maybe your brand takes off. I also liked about this one from Collector Creative because it was the very first sport gold 1 of 1 that they made, and it happens to have Michael Jordan on it, so you can't really go wrong. I thought that's cool, and I want Zach had me on his podcast, etc. So anyway, all that said, I'm a fan of these things, and I wish I could afford to buy more of it. But what, like Julian, why did you first decide to apply your painting skills to sports cards? What took you out of the larger canvas and onto our subtle little 8¼ square inch, 2.5 by 3.5 inch cardboard canvas here?
That's a good question. I would say that Abdul and I are both what we would consider conceptual artists. And so we're interested in art projects that surround ideas that we're also interested in. And both of us have a background in finance and economics. And Abdul's been a lifelong card collector. He runs a Instagram account called Peter Forsberg Collector. And I think you guys have made all kinds of interesting deals on there. And so we wanted to combine a space that connected things that we were particularly interested in. So finance, systems, contemporary art, sports cards, and do something that spoke to us uniquely. And so for us, it's a conceptual project about, and maybe this is to answer your question about what is the currency project. It's a conceptual art project about value and about systems and about exploring those value and systems through the things that we know and love, which are trading cards and contemporary art. We have a lot of documentation about all of that on our website, so I would just push you to there to read about it. Maybe just a couple quick things. We've made 161 cards. We've had 2 gallery shows, and we're just releasing our first collaborative cards where we're working with other artists who are our contemporaries who make, other paintings and have shown in galleries that we've shown in. Our next card is with an artist who's internationally collected by museums and institutions. And this is, to my best knowledge, the most significant contemporary artist that's ever worked on a trading card. And yeah, whether he's the most or he's definitely one of the most. And we're excited to share that, and we start releasing it on tomorrow, Sunday. We don't release it this Sunday, but we'll start talking about it on Sunday on our page, and then release it next Sunday and go through our normal process. But the card is really, really interesting, and we're really excited to share it.
guys, follow the Currency Project on Instagram if you're not, or you can follow their eBay account too, because that's where they sell everything. And like, you know, you're not going to like every piece that they make, because it's like, it's literal art. So not every art piece speaks. I've seen some pieces, Julian, that I'm like, oh my God, I want that. And then it goes to like you sold a Gretzky one for like way more than I was able to pay. And I wish I could have afforded it. But follow these guys, because you're going to see something, and just to support them and to expose yourself to what it is. I want to go to Joe for a moment. Joe, any thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, well, so Julian, I have a lot. I was in education for a long time as a dean of faculty, and so I made my way into my fair share of AP art classes, and a huge conversation that the teachers would have with students was kind of about you know, your relationship to your content, to your artwork, and particularly, you know, in the last, you know, 5 or 6 years around, you know, notions of appropriation, cultural appropriation. And I'm just curious if that's something in the Currency Project that's been discussed, or if that's something as an artist that you consider. In my mind, it's quite a bit different probably than, say, you know, riffing off some indigenous designs and you know, claiming that as your original art. But there may be some corollaries. Do you have any thoughts on that idea of cultural or appropriation of other artists?
It's such a great question, and one that I'm definitely used to talking about in the art scene. And so to hear it here, it's like, wow, well, didn't see that one coming. Not that I can't answer it, but, you know, just really glad to answer something like that here. Maybe there's two sides to it that I'm sure you're talking about and commenting on. Is one is our use of other artists' work, and, you know, like putting a Van Gogh in our painting, or, you know, a Van Gogh in our artwork, and that's something that we do really intentionally, because we're trying to draw these connections to say this is contemporary art, or like art at a certain level and trading cards at a certain level, and really put that together. And when we might use art that's not as recognizable for the general public, it might not be as easy to make that connection. Like, I could put something very abstract, and we have, and this is part of the project, and part of the data is when we make things that are abstract and things that people aren't used to seeing, the cards always sell for less, always. If I put a Van Gogh or a Monet or a those are the cards that sell for the most. And, you know, it's clear that there is a relationship between those value systems, and it's a very intentional thought that we're having. We don't get to share that. You know, it's hard to share that on Instagram, where, you know, people's attention span is like 5 seconds, but that's the dialogue that we're having by doing this work. When we talk about cultural appropriation, it's something we're super aware of. You know, like, these are usually athletes of color or athletes of, you know, minority backgrounds, and there's a benefit that's being, I don't want to not taken advantage of, but that we're exploring or playing with, and there's a huge conversation to be had there. And so, not the only reason, but a starting point into that space is inviting other artists. So giving other artists of other backgrounds and other opportunities to share their dialogue, so we're not the only ones. Also, we do gallery shows, and that is part of the idea behind the gallery shows, is to take the conversation further. And, you know, if you looked at some of the shows that we had in the past, they were about gentrification in the neighborhood that the gallery we were at was in. The one before that wasn't about cultural appropriation, but it was about biologics and biological systems. And so, again, like, paralleling the need for balance in, you know, an economic system versus the need for balance in a biological system. And so I say all that to say that we're very aware of that, and we're looking for those opportunities to have those dialogues, because that is what's important. Not the only thing, but what's important to us in grander scheme of this project, like the project is an exploration of value and of systems, and those are value systems.
Really interesting stuff. Christina, Joe, you good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
That's great. That's great.
All right. Christina, I mean, lots there. Let's get your feedback. And I also am curious, Christina, how long have you been aware of Currency Project's pieces? Do you own any? Do you know anyone that does besides me? Just if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I spoke with Julian and Abdul, in
We were on your podcast.
May of 2020. Yeah, like it was pre-Card Ladder.
I wonder if that's where I heard of them.
I think so. I think that's where you heard about us.
That might be.
And so that I was really into, I still am, but like I was much more active on the card art side of the hobby at that time. And I stumbled upon them and quickly became enamored with their project. I do own a card from them. It was gifted to me after the podcast, so it's kind of like cheating. But I think it was the first Jordan that they did, the Mondorian Jordan that you guys did in 2020. And I have it tucked away in my card art box that like is in a fireproof safe. So knock on wood. But I love it, and I've been following the Currency Project pretty early on, I would say. And I'm still like rooting for them. And every time, I mean, I saw the Van Gogh, and I think I messaged you guys like immediately, and I was just like, this is so much. This is what I wanted the insert set that Panini had announced of the like Starry Night insert set. This is what I wanted it to be. Like, this was what I want. Like, this is what my expectations became upon reading the card, the insert name. And while that one, I don't want to say something negative, I will say it didn't resonate with me personally. I think that's the best way I can say it. I'm sorry. But the Currency Project was like, well, here's the gold standard of what it would be. So I think that they're doing amazing work, and I love to see the partnerships. I was super excited when I saw one of your pieces on the Art But Make It Sports page. I was super stoked because I was like, I know him. And I even wrote that in the Art But Make It Sports like Twitter in a comment. I was like, oh my God, I know him. So I just, though we don't talk as often as I wish we could, I think I could say that about most people that I adore in the hobby. I'm always rooting for you and you guys and what you're doing, and I'm following, and hopefully you feel that love coming across the screen. We
definitely do. Like, between the Jeremy, you, Chris, now you, Joe, thank you. We feel it, and it means a lot, actually, for an artist that you're actually looking at where I spend most of my time is in this studio by myself working on these things, and having your guys' support means a lot because, you spend a lot of time alone. So,
yeah. If anyone listening, watching, you've seen, the last 4 years of Sports Cards Live, especially in my old house studio, this card was on the shelf really since I got it. Now you can't see it. It's out of camera's view, but I see it every day. I love it. I think it's just so much fun and really cool. Guys, I want to go to a couple comments, and then we're going to bring Chris Hodge on. We're going to let him and Christina be on together for a few minutes, but not too. They spend enough time together. We don't need them on here together for too much. Christina, is Chris in the same room as you right now? Like, where? No? Okay. Okay.
No, I was kicked out of the office so that he could have the office space for when he appears. Yeah.
For his usual batting cleanup here on SCL 2.0. So the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast said, if they check the server logs at Card Ladder, I'd be shocked if I wasn't the biggest Card Ladder power user. Love the platform, and Josh and the Gong Show do a great job of talking about, the most sold players in a certain time span, and they use your data for that. And I think that's really awesome. Carbon Chung says, I was thinking that Christina is a clone. She is too pleasant today. I love it. Logan Ward says, Carbon is a great creator. Carbon the creator. All Ks. Love it. Guys, Rage is in the building, everybody. Quick announcement. Rage is in the building. The professor says, I've been a big supporter of piggy banks, but as his popularity has grown, there is no longer direct access to him any longer. That's an interesting comment because, I don't know that I need direct access. Julian, we talk 3-4 times a year. It's enough. It's enough unless we become great friends, right? But I don't need direct access to I have it because I do podcasts, but if I didn't, I'd be okay. But do you have any insight into that comment by the professor and piggy bank at all?
I think you said it best yourself with the fact that you look at that card every day, and that is your direct access. I mean, we put our heart and souls into those paintings. I guarantee you the time, if you break down the hours I spend on this project and translate it into dollars, it's not worth it, but it's worth it because the magic that comes through in the artwork that you get. I know that those cards exist in people's living rooms, and that people have told me that they stare at those cards all the time.
Yeah,
that is the direct access.
That's amazing. That's so great. And then finally, the professor also says says one side benefit of the Currency Project's Instagram post is you learn how the original card is structured. And that's really great because what you guys do and what these guys do is they will show you pictures of the art piece, the card, at various stages of its creation. And I think that's just really, really cool right there, Julian. Okay, so what we're going to do now, Julian, and you're free to respond, but first we're going to bring on Chris. Chris, you good? He's good. We're gonna bring Chris on for a minute, and then Christina, you'll say hi to your guy, say hi to your partner, and then but before we bring him on, I just want to say to you, Christina, thank you for coming on. Thank you for just giving us your time and for your just being a hobby friend for so long. So great
for
to
not
have
cussing.
you.
You can say it for not cussing, as Carvin said, for being pleasant, because obviously I'm horrible.
Exactly. Thank you for being so pleasant. It's good to have you on the show, and to just add some diversity as well. I mean, let's face it.
That's what I was going to say, Jay Lee. Well, yeah, I mean, thank you for representing a female presence in the hobby. Just straight up, thank you. It's not
hundo, as they say, hundo.
And Christina, honestly, I appreciate the candor because, we live in a world where I'd rather hear the truth than people just saying what you want to hear them say. That gets pretty boring.
I couldn't agree more. That's my motto for life.
Keep it.
All right.
Keep
it.
Guys.
I appreciate you guys having me. I'll stick around, but I appreciate it. Feel free to kick me off as well whenever you want.
Okay, I want to have you guys on. There we go. Look at this view. 5 of us on the screen here.
Wow.
Chris Hoge, welcome back. My cleanup guy in the lineup. Chris Batts cleanup. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for keeping an eye on Christina tonight. Really appreciate that.
Thanks for sending her a text message before we started.
She was very, very professional. Just want to say she did a great job.
Representing well, for sure. Very nice.
Can I ask a question to Julian?
Yep.
Julian, whatever happened to that Iverson that I saw at the National?
Were you just listening to what we were talking about?
I was trying to.
Okay, so the card that is done by the artist that's collected in museums and institutionally accepted, that is that Iverson, and it's coming. It's right here. You will see it very soon.
Nice.
So you just scooped what he said was not yet ready to be announced.
Oh no, it's perfect. I mean, that's the perfect setup. I mean, I think when Chris saw it, Chris always takes his time with our cards, which I really appreciate. And he noticed how special that card is. And the artist spent a lot of time with it. And he did something that we don't do. Like, he peeled it apart, turned it into different layers, chopped it up, and glued it all back together in a way that like really transformed even how I think of this process. And it's super special. This card is really we think all of our cards are contemporary art. This one is like contemporary art.
I feel like I've seen an image of it. Has the picture of this Iverson been out there?
We shared a little teaser of it on our Instagram, like a little crop of it.
I think I've seen that. And when is it going live on eBay, where you sell all your cards?
On eBay, it'll go live not this Sunday, but next Sunday, and we'll start talking about it tomorrow.
Awesome. And the way to find out, guys, follow them on eBay, follow them on Instagram. That's where you guys put these things out. Okay, well, Christina, it was great having you, and it's nice to have you and Chris, to have you both on the screen. And I just want to say that I don't remember why, but when you mentioned that Christina's Corner was a spinoff, was it Christina's Corner? Yeah, Christina's Corner. Mm-hmm. Yeah, was a spinoff of the House of Jordan's podcast. And you see a smile coming on my face because that was my first podcast with House of Jordan. I mean, it's so funny. I know you
used to have a great impression, Jeremy, where you would you would do the opening. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I don't remember the cousins part, but it was when Christina would come on, she'd be, and you can find me on Instagram at KRISTINASPC. And I don't even remember what you were, Chris _ House of Jordans, whatever you were there. But Christina, thank you for coming on. And hope you're willing to come back on again here in the future in due course.
Always. Thank you, all of you gentlemen, for a great Saturday night with me. I had a bunch of fun. Hi to the chat. I saw a bunch of people, including Chad and Josh and a bunch of others, I'm sorry, who made individual shout outs. Thank you everyone for having me and talking with me. Jeremy, always a pleasure. Joe, catch you on Clubhouse.
Catch you.
Bye, guys.
See you, Christina. Thanks so much. All right. So let's now, I want to get Chris Hoge. I want to get your thoughts on card art and any thoughts on, you mentioned the Iverson card, but do you own any pieces? Do you covet them? Where do you see card art? And when I use that to think of like all these artists out there that are creating their pieces, whether they're using software or oil on canvas or using, cutting up the card carver or, Luke the Cardist, all these different, and there's more I know. But where do you see them fitting into the hobby? Is it how widely accepted are you seeing these things being, Chris, and where do you see it going?
I have an appreciation for it, and I enjoy the art that goes into them, but it hasn't really landed on my radar yet. I haven't found a lane in that space yet for myself, and I don't know that I ever will because I'm preoccupied with finding a lot of grails that I still need to get off of my checklist. So there's two levels to it. I can appreciate it, but I have never jumped into that world either. The card that, of all the cards I've ever seen that could do it, though, the Iverson that I saw at the National last year was a really compelling card. It made me feel something in the way that art is supposed to make you feel things.
Nice. All right, good stuff.
Now we know why you asked.
Yeah. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that card come to the market.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, so Chris, now Julian, with Chris, what I say, and for everybody watching, listening, is Chris does the crossover on Instagram Live on Friday nights with Josh. Christina's in the background, kind of doing her rants as she just told us, and you talk about a lot of great topics, Chris. And I say, there's probably something that you didn't talk about enough that you might want to, talk about more, or you weren't able to get to. And So I don't know what you're coming with today, but you know that I like you to come with something. So throw it at us, and what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm going to blow Joe's mind with this for sure, I think. I'm going to get a DM from Joe after this. It's going to be like, whoa, man, where did this come from? Here's my topic for tonight, and I look forward to all the reactions to it. It's not my idea. It's not my idea, but I heard it on a different podcast, and it was such an interesting idea that I knew as soon as I heard it, I had to bring it to SCL 2.0. I think it's going to resonate with this audience in a way that it would not resonate with the crossover audience. So I was listening to the most recent Friday conversation on stacking slabs, which was with a collector named Southern Collector 14.
Tony.
And this is maybe the first time a vintage baseball collector and a pre-war baseball collector had appeared on that podcast. So it was an interesting clash of styles. And Tony launched into his rationale, or maybe his psychological analysis of why people collect vintage and pre-war cards. And I'd never heard it formulated this way. And it really made me think. Because when I was a kid, and when I was collecting in the 90s, I was a huge basketball fan, and we already had GOATs in basketball. We already had Wilt. We already had Mikan. We already had Bill Russell. We already had Jerry West. We already had Kareem. We already had Magic Johnson. We already had Larry Bird. I mean, those five are still in the top 10. I mean, we already had a Mount Rushmore of great players, but I didn't want to collect them. I wasn't moved by them. I wanted to collect the players who I was watching. I wanted to collect Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon and Chris Webber and all these guys. That's what I wanted to collect as a kid in the 90s, and that's what I collected. And now, as you know, when I came back to the hobby, I went back to Michael Jordan and stuff, but there's an obvious connection there, which is that's what I was excited about as a kid. There was a direct nostalgic connection. But Tony was talking about even collecting pre-war, which predates him. And so the question is, how does anybody who didn't watch and live through pre-war end up collecting it? And I think that's pretty much everybody who collects it today will not have that direct connection to it. And here was Tony's answer. He said, and this is a paraphrase, but he gave a few paragraph explanation to this, and I'm going to distill it down. But he said, when you're a young person, you look forward all the time. You're looking into the future, you're projecting, you're thinking about what's up next. Everything is forward looking. And then he said, as he got older and as his kids grew up and as milestones were achieved, suddenly he had a shift in perspective. And now he wasn't looking forward all the time, but sometimes as a human being, he also was pausing and looking back. There was something psychological that was happening to him as a human being that wanted to reminisce on milestones that his kids had achieved, their first day in school, their graduation, and so forth. He said there was a real pronounced change in his psychology that led to him not always looking forward, but also looking back. And then he said, the further you age, the more you tend to look back. And as collectors, I think that is built into us as well. And that was his explanation for why collectors who have no nostalgic ties to an era can still end up collecting it, because their brain at some point develops the tendency of wanting to look back and appreciate previous things. And I'll stop there and pause for reactions to that.
I mean, I have an immediate art reaction is like as an art collector, I'm super interested in collecting art of my contemporaries, the people I know or the people that are, you know, alive, or maybe, and partially might be because it's things that I can afford. But what I know I spend a lot of time doing, especially as I get older, is reading books of or collecting monographs of artists from the past. I mean, I actually watched like a 4-hour documentary on Leonardo da Vinci on PBS, and it was amazing. You know, it was so insightful as to who I am as an artist and what and help me understand why I do certain things that I do. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to have this reflective mentality and appreciative mentality of the lineage of how did we get here, and being able to understand that. And so as you start to go into that, then I can see wanting to collect those things.
Joe, what do you make of? I mean, Chris really was expecting to blow your mind. Are you or what are you thinking, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about imagination as a critical component in this, because at least for me as a kid, I didn't, experience the Roger Bresnahans or, even Ty Cobb's, but I read, the Roger Angels. I read books that opened my mind to imagining a time period where these players were playing, and I think the cards represented a bridge to that. So in a strange way, it did connect with sort of a childhood wonder, even though it wasn't a wonder that I had direct experience with. And then there was also a dual side to that, which I would kind of classify as provenance. What is the story of that card? Like, how did that card, show up in, the Factory 26, West Virginia, like where, wherever the heck it originated from. And, this one was centered, this one wasn't. So there's sort of a production element at play as well. And an artistic element, whether, it was sort of understood at that time as art or not. I have to think there was some understanding of art, some understanding of pride in what people were doing in terms of the paintings. And I'm thinking specifically about T206, T205, or even, right around the 1941s, the 33 Gaudis, those kind of cards. So to me, the key concept that comes to my mind is just the imaginative leap of stepping through time and accessing a different moment, which young and old, I think I always sort of had a fascination with.
Yeah. I started collecting cards of the players I was watching, like in person. That's what I first wanted. And then I realized, oh, there's a whole set. Okay, I want to do the set. I wanted to complete the set. It was a goal every year. And then as I started getting more of those sets, I became interested in what else there was out there. And I could not look forward at products. I could always look forward to vacations and my future, but I could only look back for more options of what to collect. And then I started trying to find ways to have a theme of what to collect. And I did that. And then I pursued that. And that took me back even further. And I kept on. And then it's like, okay, well, what are the first ones? Oh, okay. The tobacco cards. Maybe I will try to complete that set and collect those. And then, but it all like what Tony, I haven't listened to that podcast, but what Tony said, what you're conveying to us, Chris, I'm in line with that. As I got older, I started looking back further, and not just because I was hungry for something to collect, but because I wanted to learn the history and history. Yeah. Right? Yeah, Julian, it's the history that interests us. And then, what doesn't reconcile with Tony's theory, but I think does, because there's exceptions to every rule, is these young collectors, the Ryan Nolans of the world, breakout cards, who is 24 years old, or however, maybe he's probably older now. I've known, it's been 5 years now since pandemic, but who are these young kids that do collect vintage at the age of 12, 13, 14, 20. And I see some of these kids at card shows. They're out there buying vintage, and it blows my mind. Maybe because I project. It didn't happen to me until I got, twice, 3 times your age. How are you so interested in these things when you're not watching the highlights of these? but they had, it's how they were raised. They have a
They were
keen
raised
interest in
that way for
history
sure.
and
Yeah.
all that, Julian. So that's what I want to say about it. And I'll have to go listen to that episode. Chris, thanks for pointing me in that direction. But Julian, you're kind of nodding along. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I agree. I think I'm always in awe of and love meeting kids like that are interested in history, because something tells me that their minds are just thinking a little bit differently, because where we are now is always a function of where we came from. Things are built on top of each other. So whether you realize that at a young age or an older age, it's that truth always exists. And when kids see that at such a young age, it just shows that they're really in tune with understanding what they're consuming. And I love that.
I love that too. I think it's just awesome. A couple comments have come in, so let's go to those for now. First of all, Yankees fan says, great show as usual. Thank you, Yankees fan. Am I going to be doing a Mint Ink drawing tonight? My friendly reminder, I'm not. That was a 2024 thing. Mint Ink is still a sponsor and very supportive of them as they are of us, but no, we're not doing the giveaways anymore. Yankees fan, that was to the end of 2024. Yitz is in the house, everybody. It's good to see you, pal. Always good to see you. The professor responds to the comment I made about direct access, saying direct access means you can share with the artist your reaction to their creation. I love that, professor. He goes on to say, I mentioned to Piggy Banks something I liked about a card, and he thanked me as he had debated on not even doing it. Love that. That's awesome, professor. And it's too bad you don't have that direct access anymore. Carbon Chung says, how often we as fans wish we could go back in time to watch these immortals, whether it's sports, artists, religious leaders, and history. We all imagine going back in time. Cards allow us to dream of being there. He goes on to say, when we age, we gain knowledge and have a different perspective. Thus, we have more to go back to. Yeah, I love that. We imagine going back in time and watching them or knowing them or conversing with them, whatever it is. It's fantasy. History is fantasy if we weren't there for it, and that's a neat way to look at it. Chris, you're nodding along. What's going through your mind right now?
Yeah, I loved hearing you guys' different perspectives on that. It was really 3 different perspectives on it. Like the quote moved you guys each in different ways, which I was really interested in, and it moved me in a 4th way. The thing that stuck with me that I want to highlight about it, or the thing that was most profound about it to me, was that on the crossover, we'll get questions once every few months that are along the lines of, why will vintage and pre-war cards keep their value? Aren't they eventually going to lose interest as the generation that has nostalgic ties to them passes on? And I've never really had a great answer for that. I've just always sort of said, well, the Honus Wagner has a nice run going of never selling for less than it previously did. So I don't know the mechanism, but we have some evidence here in the pricing history to suggest that these cards continue to be coveted long after the generation that lived alongside those athletes has moved along. And now finally, I think I have a theory. I'm not sure if it's the right theory, but I have a theory, thanks to Southern Collector 14, that can explain it. And the theory is the mechanism that enables people to collect older cards, vintage pre-war cards that they might have nostalgic ties to, but more importantly, cards that they might have no nostalgic ties to. And they might not have any emotional resonance with those cards in terms of living contemporaneous with these moments happening. Instead, the mechanism is that they take a greater and greater interest as they advance in life in things that happened previously, and not only things that are going to happen in the future. Like to make it like a really simple example, there at a certain point, we're not hyper focused on, is this quarterback the next great quarterback? You can almost think of it as like a sliding scale. Like at first, like we're just interested in what's coming next. Like these guys who I'm watching, I want one of these guys to be the best. I can't wait to see what happens. Then you sort of get to a point where you're interested in what's happening in the future, but you have an equal interest in what's happening in the past. And maybe it gets to the point where you really don't care about the next 5 years of this sport and who the next breakout player is. You're really interested in celebrating and learning about and collecting the things of the past. And if that is true, if that psychological tendency in the human being also plays out in the collecting world, then that is a robust theory of how cards that come from vintage or pre-war and the 1800s and cards that predate the nostalgic connection that any of us could possibly have to them will still have very strong markets and strong collector bases. That is the mechanism. He's finally given it. I'd never thought of it before. I'd never heard of it before. Finally, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a response or another comment about, why, and I hope it fits into that theory or that mechanism, Chris. But another, as time goes by, and even though I've been collecting cards that are 100 years old for several years now, the scope upon which the scope of the cards that I'm interested in has grown. From being just hockey to being baseball, and baseball, because I'm talking about pre-50s for the most part. And a lot of it comes down to, how the sport integrated into being a national pastime, hockey, Canada, baseball in the US. It was a different time back then. These athletes, they weren't training the way they do now. They had off-season jobs because they couldn't make enough money in their sport. It was a different time. It was a more innocent time. And you look at today's world, and it is what it is. It exists as it does because of where we are in the evolution of humanity on Earth. But it's a hearkening back to a simpler time. I said innocent. I said it's a simpler time when Joe DiMaggio is dating Marilyn Monroe and Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra are whatever, they're drinking beers at the during training, whatever it was. I'm making that up, but it was just they were not making the money that they are now relative to, I'm not talking about inflation, relative to the common man. They were the common man back then. Now, yeah, they were famous, but they were the common man. And there's something romantic about that for me, to think that I can collect a card of Jackie Robinson or Joe DiMaggio, I know they were making some money, but not like today, and realize that, they were a lot more like me at that time, than LeBron James and Connor McDavid and Patrick Mahomes, just to throw a few sports in there, right? A lot different. Never mind, who's the guy that just signed for $750 million? Soto, right? There's all those things that for me make me right now. The top 3 cards on my want list are from 1933, 1941, and 1909. So, and it's because of I think a lot of things, but including what I just said. And I hope because it would just be nice and convenient if it all tied into the Tony theory. Julian, do you have something you want to jump in with before Chris responds?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think the big theme is it's an appreciation for the history and the importance of the history. And then I think the nuance in what Chris is saying, which is really interesting, is the being so worried about the future and then getting to the point of who cares about what happens in the future? The past is so deep and interesting that we could just spend our time there, and it doesn't really matter what happens in the future. And it's true in the art world too. That's why you can go to the Met and spend you can't even go to the Met in one day, because there's so much depth to explore. And if you can just appreciate that depth, then it doesn't really, it's not that it doesn't matter what happens in the future, but I can see how you can let go of that, especially in sports.
Chris?
Can I ask a quick question to Julian?
Yeah.
Where I'm at, because I was just going to say something to Hoj about time traveling into the future and looking at the now, which is something I do when I think about, say, the statistics that Nikola Jokic is putting up right now, right?
Uh-huh.
And we do some of that, but Julian, to ask you, I mean, is there some way in which you think art actually transcends time or breaks down? I mean, there's the theory of the fourth dimension, that everything's happening all at once and there isn't necessarily a linear path. And not to get too esoteric, but I mean, when I look at some of the works that the Currency Project has put out, I am seeing this kind of interesting intersectionality of different eras and different styles, and I think that's maybe something that you all are playing with. But what do you think about time and the way in which art maybe is both, you know, contextual, obviously in a time period, but maybe transcendent of time as well?
That's a deep question. That's interesting. I can say I've felt that as I've made paintings. The one that really comes to mind was this Damian Lillard painting that had a Monet background, and Damian Lillard was like holding up the sun for the, you know, misty background. And those two things have nothing to do with each other. Like, those two time periods are totally unrelated. Basketball wasn't even a sport, you know, or definitely not one that people talked about. But they fit together because of that transcendence in time. And I think maybe what it is like our ability as humans to somehow connect with these things and to feel them. And you feel Monet's painting the same way you feel Damian Lillard, like, you know, performing and doing this amazing thing. And it's maybe a similar feeling that you get, you know, it's just some level of excitement. And so that might be what brings them together and what transcends, you know, just an idea of how time is transcended in those two things. I don't know if that makes sense. I was like,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it also comes to mind, I mean, the LeBron shot, dunk, whatever that, I think it was 2021 Prism. I don't know what it was, but mixing that with the classical image and the transcendence. And then you think about Kobe, LeBron's imitating Kobe and Kobe's up there. And I mean, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. And then you can start to bring those parallels together. And so, I think the opportunity to transcend time is like available in so many different ways. And I think that is a part of what makes the project, or our project, interesting, but just even art and sports interesting in general is the way it connects with people.
All right, good stuff. Chris, your thoughts on that and what I was saying earlier, if it reconciles, and anything else that I can actually see your brain spinning right now.
Don't look in there. It does reconcile. And my final thought on this that I would turn back to my colleagues here is, if this theory is true, everybody on this screen has decades of collecting in front of them. And have you thought about, or are you now beginning to think about, how this might actually impact how you collect 10, 20 years from now? I had to encounter this as a collector myself, and thinking about, I might not be excited about the same things at all that I'm excited about now in 10 years or in 20 years. I might finally start up that Wilt Chamberlain collection because it will mean more to me then to look back than it does now. I'm still admittedly caught up in the present moment of it all. I just wonder if everybody here has taken stock of how we might all evolve as collectors, especially if this theory is true, that we might increasingly tend towards things of the past as we advance and collect.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have hit on a very, I think, a really important concept that collectors realize as they evolve and they get more years of experience in the hobby. I often say, you can allow yourself to fall out of love with the card, and that to me is just your tastes evolving. So it happens for sure. And then I also think this has happened to me, Chris, decade after decade. It happens all the time where I'm in the moment, and I think I've actually thought to myself, what am I gonna covet from this era in 10 or 20 years, and can I get ahead of it so I have it in 10 or 20 years and I don't have to pay the price then? You know, what's under the radar right now? And that actually led me to a lot of some hobby success, you could say, because I had some savviness in my ability to forecast where some tastes would go, generally speaking. So I'm always thinking about that. Like, this is like, there are things that are not very well loved right now that I think 10, 20 years from now, people are gonna be like, hey, that was a sneaky subset or insert set or card. And, you know, I'm going to go for that now because it's so rare. No one's thinking about it. And then all of a sudden you're going to see the flexes on whatever the platforms are called at that time. And there could be a rush on them, that sort of thing. I've also been in the moment and kind of like, you know, smack myself for being like, why wasn't, like, I love this now. Where was I then? Why wasn't I on it then? Was I not aware of it? Was I too, you know, kind of focused on what I was interested in at the time? And so I think it's a great point that you made. And I think the answer is yes. I mean, well, yes for me, but for people who haven't, my advice is think into the future, because the future, you know, hopefully is coming for all of us, you know, and that future is, you know, hopefully we all have some decades left. And you know, just because something's hot right now or cold right now doesn't mean that's going to be the case in 15 or 20 years. So that's how I respond to that, Chris. Unless you have any reactions, let's hear from Joe and Julian. Julian, why don't you go first on this one, and Joe will come to you after, and then we may have some time just with you, Chris, after Julian, and we may have a special surprise guest coming. I'm not sure if he's coming, and he might be in the chat. If you are, you got the link. Come on if you want, but let's start with whoever I just said.
So I'll answer it from the art perspective, since that's my role in this conversation. It really makes me think about the history of art. And as I mentioned, like watching the Leonardo da Vinci documentary the other night, I don't like Renaissance art. Like, usually I go to museums with Renaissance art, and there's my least favorite museums to go to. But I still, and as you say this, seek the patience to listen about it and understand where it came from and why it was made, and even try to find some empathy is the wrong word, but, you know, putting myself in those shoes and understanding why that was happening at that time. And I think it helps you understand maybe your present moment more thoroughly. So yeah, I definitely will remember that as it relates to collecting. I mean, obviously I'm not going to start collecting Renaissance art. Maybe I will one day if I hit the lottery or something, but and then maybe just to throw it or put a small card spin to it, we definitely have been looking at vintage cards, and we'll have some vintage things coming up in the future. So
nice.
I'm guessing, yeah, I was going to say, I'm guessing you guys can tell who that is. That's what I ran off camera to go grab while someone was talking. So yeah, I love it. I love what you had to share. I think it's super profound, and we'll carry it.
Well, Christina's liking it. She's giving you a big let's go. TCP goes vintage. There you go. Very nice. Very nice. Joe, I think we're going to go to you next on all this talk of looking forward, looking back. You've been in the hobby your whole life. Have you experienced anything similar to what I was talking about?
Absolutely. And you know, I think Chris's question is one of those questions that's sort of more important. The question's more important than the answer, right? Just letting the question be.
Leave it to Joe to elevate the discussion, right?
And having said that, I'll also throw in that on a personal level, I've there's an exchange of ideas possible in this community where we don't have to necessarily live in fixed mindsets, right? We can hear other people's perspectives and then be moved. And so, for instance, you know, in relation to, you know, Hoj, it's not a deliberate effort, right? It's just you being you and stating what is meaningful to you about certain cards. You've, you know, influenced me, and I think we use that word in a negative way so much in the hobby, but I think it could actually be utilized in a positive way if you hear something and it actually resonates with you, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, a card that's a 1 of 1 that's aesthetically appealing in 10 to 20 years may very well be seen. I mean, I know there's even criticism right now about like, our 1 of 1's overhyped and this, that, and the other. But if we do the time travel forward and we do look back and we do start to consider how many people might hold these, you know, the old, what is it, diamond finger analogy, you know, deep in their collection, these things may not be very easy to find. They may not be very easy to acquire. And at that point, we may have even a deeper appreciation than the quick, you know, the flipper vortex context that we see them in today. So I've been moved as primarily a vintage collector. I've been moved to the more scarce modern issues, especially of players who it's, you know, it's no fault of, you know, whatever, you know, you want to say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you want to say Luka Doncic, you want to say Nikola Jokic, you want to say Steph Curry. It's no fault of them what era they landed in terms of the card creations and the productions. Yeah. But there they are. And in that context, if that's your person, you know, Caitlin Clark, if that's your person, you want to find the most meaningful card in that context, probably. Or at least the most meaningful card to you
that you can afford.
That you can afford, yeah, with all these, you know, contextual pieces. So I think that's the argument for when you're forecasting, kind of just being a little sensitive to the idea that what, you know, it gets back to what you were saying, Jeremy. It's just our sensibilities and our understandings of what we thought was really important in one moment may shift. And if we could forecast our own future selves perfectly, that would be great. But I think the closer we can get to that, in some ways, the more advanced we are within our own collecting sensibilities.
And it ties back into Tony's theory, right? Because as we gain more experience in the hobby, we maybe are better able to look forward, put ourselves ahead so that we can look back and say, oh, maybe I'm missing something that I will love down the road. I like, Joe, how you said diamond fingers, because I usually think of it as diamond hands. And I just went from having the ability to hold 2 cards forever to 10. So thank you very much. Chris, lots there for you to respond to, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to call attention to the idea, and it's a little bit of a moving to a different topic. It's related, but it's kind of a different topic. And you brought it up, Jeremy, and I jotted it down. This idea of allowing yourself to fall out of love with a card is something that the phrasing of it is the magic of it, because the phrasing conveys that there's a tendency, once we get a card and it's found its place in our collection and it's been there for a year, 2 years, 5 years, that we just feel like it can't ever leave. It's there. We loved it when we bought it. We have to love it now. But it absolutely happens that you'll just be going through your 2-row one day of graded slabs, and you'll come across it, and it just doesn't move you in the same way anymore. And I wouldn't want to too hastily decide if it doesn't move me anymore. I might want to put it back and come back in a week and just make sure. But it opened my mind to the idea that I probably need to give myself permission to move on from a few cards if they no longer have the meaning to me that they did when I got it. And I think that's such an underrated part of collecting. Like, it happens, we think about it all the time, but we don't really articulate it. It never comes to the surface. It's always beneath the surface. Is that collecting, the thing that really fires us all up is engaging with meaning. That's at the heart of collecting, is engaging with meaning. And a card can have a lot of different levels of meaning to us. If that meaning starts to go away, we need to give ourselves permission to accept that.
Yeah. So you just mentioned, you don't want to jump into the falling out of love and moving it. So I have a solution for that. I call that my limbo box. This is a box of cards. Like, it's got some of it are traders, but there's a row in here. Sometimes I have to take this sticky off and just go limbo, and sometimes, and I change these labels all the time to fit what's in them. But right now, there's cards in here that are currently in limbo. These are cards that I have taken out of my PC, and I'm considering putting them into my card show traders, whatever, cards that are no longer in the PC, and I will eventually move. But I don't rush into it, Chris. Like you said, they sit in limbo for as long as they need to until I go to a card show. I'm like, okay, they've been in there. I'm going to move them. But I'll tell you, if I put 25 cards in here, without a doubt, 5 are getting put back into the PC because I can't bear to part with them. So it's a tough process. And that was going
to be one of my follow-ups was how often does a card ever make its way back to the main PC box? But my other question was going to be how long on average. Well, 2 questions. How long on average does a card live in the main PC box before it makes its way to that limbo box? And then how long does a card live in the limbo box on average until the final judgment is made on where it will go?
I mean, I own cards to this day that I've owned for, 35 years. I own cards that I've had for 35 years. I own several cards that I've had for 20 years. And they're not ever going in the limbo box, at least until they're going to, when I decide to sell off everything because I'm that old, that's when that'll happen. I'm not taking anything to the grave with me. I'm going to sell it all if my kids don't want it. So, but how long do they stay in limbo? Well, kind of as long as they need to, or until the next card show. Because I really, I've been known, I do sell cards through Slab Sharks on eBay quite regularly as well, but I'm not just searching my PC for them. So usually traders that have gone stale, but that's a whole other topic. So really, they stay in limbo until I'm going to a card show where I'm going to sell them or trade them or move them in some way, or they come to that card show with me in limbo. And this happens locally when I go to the local shows. When I can take more with me, I'll take the box, but I don't put them out in the showcase. They're with me, but they're not out on display. So the question doesn't have a perfect answer. It's kind of all over the place, but the concept of a limbo box was kind of a breakthrough for me personally. And just, again, allowing myself to be like, because you said it, Chris, you feel like you have to keep it forever sometimes. I'm past that. I've moved past that for myself. So
what does it take, like when you're at a show, these cards are in the limbo box, but they haven't made it to the display case? What does it take for somebody to come across your table for you to actually reach into that limbo box and say, wow?
Someone says, it happened to me recently. Someone's like, do you have any Marian Hossa, hockey player? I was like, actually, I do have a card with me. Pull it out. And you know what it would take, Chris? It would take me witnessing that person really wanting the card.
Okay.
If they want it so bad, I'm probably going to move it to them because I feel like it's going to I'm not going to say a better home, but a good home, a loving home. And I mean, we're talking about cardboard here. It's funny, but that's kind of where my mind goes. If they want it that bad, I'm probably willing to move it at that point. Yeah. Julian, anything you're
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are some things that you can think of that would get you to fall out of love of a card? Like what needs to happen for that to happen?
Yeah, for me, it's been like either I haven't like paired it with more cards, so it's an odd duck in my collection. But that can also happen with a whole set, a whole set. Maybe I no longer just love the looks of, or I've acquired other cards that kind of fill my need for that player's representation. That could do it as well. I've moved on to something I like more, so I don't need it. I've got like 35 player collections, but some of them have 3 cards. I don't have that. Like a 3-card PC to me, that qualifies. No one can tell me that having 3 cards of a player is not a player collection. Darn well is a player collection to me. It might not be to you. That's fine. So yeah, that's kind of it. If there's lots of reasons why, or I made a mistake. I bought a card. I thought it looked great in 2 dimensions. I landed. I just don't like it anymore. Simple as that, Julian. And just other random reasons. My taste has changed. Yeah. Does that answer?
Oh yeah, for sure. I could see, for me, I think in art, it's evolution in taste. There might be an artist that I just loved at one point in time. And this kind of goes to the looking back and looking maybe forward thing. The more I look back, or maybe the other artists come around that I'm just like, wow, I've discovered someone that has taken this to a whole nother place, or maybe another artist comes that they take it to a whole nother place. And so that person that I was enamored with, or, fascinated with at that point in time, that taste has now evolved into something different. And so maybe I've fallen a little bit out of love with what I was originally fascinated with.
Joe and I often talk about that the process of, do I still should I move this card? And I mean, Joe goes back and forth on these things a lot of the time. So it's not like some of us it's easier for some of us, it's harder for some of us. But Joe, you want to just sort of share your thoughts? And guys, we are going to wrap this episode up here in about 5 minutes, just as an FYI. I want to do some comments, but because I don't want to really go past 3.5 hours. I think that's enough. And Julian, feel free to drop off when you want, or stick around for the next 5 minutes too.
Sure.
Joe, your thoughts on this question that Chris presented originally, and Julian added on to.
I just love that you have a box of the cards in Limbo. As I reflected earlier, I have a literary brain, and Dante placed Limbo as the vestibule for hell, right? And it was for the sinners who never made a choice in life, which in some ways Dante was even more upset about than the people that sinned outright, because he lived in a very political time in Florence, and he felt like everybody was a political citizen. So there was some invitation to know what you thought and have the sort of fortitude to stand up for what you thought. So cards in Limbo, I guess you could say, they're the ones that you haven't quite, figured out entirely. And, I'm, of course, probably because of Julian's presence here, I'm thinking about the artistic representations of both purgatory, limbo, hell. But I see you wanting to weigh in here.
Well, I'm like, for me, the literal definition of limbo, or the scholastic historical definition, for me, it's just this place of in between. I'm not sure, and I guess it comes from heaven and hell, or life and death, whatever, but certainly not the way I think of it. But it is what's that?
Oh, there's no disparagement in my mind, because
no, I know,
but probably more than you do about which.
Yeah, well, no, it's like you said, Julian's here. I love the thoughts, but yeah, the limbo is just somewhere where you just you're parking them there because you're not quite ready to let go of them, but they might be on their way out. And the other thing is that you kind of said that you don't quite have them figured out. They were figured out at one time. I don't know how you articulate this. They were at one time very well figured out because they made it into the PC, but something happened along the way where that clarity faded, and now they're in more of a state of confusion, limbo, and then maybe they go back in, maybe they don't, maybe they get moved out altogether. I'm going to read some comments quick, Chris, and then we're going to maybe let you put a bow on this discussion when we wrap up. So get your thoughts kind of organized in your mind. I'm sure they are. 90s Auctions, Josh said, Babe Ruth is the most impotent figure in baseball history. He will never go out of style. Junk Wax Museum, another excellent episode. Gracias, thank you, Junk Wax Museum. Carvin Chung said, when we get older, we want to pass on the knowledge of what we know to the next generation. Can we really appreciate the future when we lose our past? Deep stuff there. Very deep stuff right there. Mookie Chilson says, falling out of love with the card is okay, but divorces can be expensive. Yeah, especially if you fall out of love with it at a very bad time and you sell it for a big loss. Jeff Hart is loving the limbo box. I'm glad you are, Jeff Hart. Feel free, anyone, take the idea. Join me with having a limbo box. Mark Santucci says, are there any cards that you guys sold that you missed and wish you had back? Mark, honestly, I think we all could say yes to that. But I don't think we're going to go around the horn on that one right now. Producer Louis says, I have the same thing. Where the hell do these cards go? Or a limbo box. All right, Louis, so we're on the same page. And GQ says, you guys are weird. Well, we take that as a compliment in this hobby. Double V cards. Yes, we are very philosophical tonight. Jeff McMahon, good night to you. He says, I really like the new format, Jeremy. I do too. I'm enjoying these shows a ton. Thank you, Jeff McMahon. We are now going to go around the horn and we are going to finish up. If for Mark Santucci, anybody would like to throw out a card that they sold that they wish they could get back now, please feel free to do so. Why don't we start with you, Julian? Just final comments and all that kind of thing.
Final comments. I think something I find super interesting is the relationship between the mentality in sports card collecting and art collecting, and that there's actually a lot of parallels there. And maybe this is like a whole bigger topic, but I'm just curious. We can table it, or something to think about is, as art and card art comes into the space, does it open the idea to people thinking about collecting art, not card art, but just art, and thinking about the idea that there's actually a lot of parallels there in young artists becoming famous artists, et cetera, and maybe that's opening up a discussion for next episode or next time we show up here. I
love the comment. My thought immediately goes to, my budget goes to sports cards personally. Yeah. At this time, I have some art on my walls. I love it. And it's all original art from artists that I know, that I've met like locally, including those paintings up behind me of the cards. But I appreciate the comment. And yeah, if you remember that one, Julian, next time you come on, we can definitely discuss it. Joe, let's go to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, since Mark asked, I'm going to mention a card that I regretted selling. It was a 63 Topps Mantle, not a very high grade, and not a card that I couldn't repossess in some form or another. But the reason I regret selling it is, after the fact, I remembered more about the acquisition of the specific card and its place in my collection for so long. And so there was kind of a after the fact recognition that, of all the cards that I could have sold, that one had more nostalgic value because of the time that I acquired it, which was probably around 14 years old. So I think that says something about card collecting. It's not just the specific artifact that we acquire. It's also about the context in which we acquire it and its personal meaning for us.
Yeah, I that reminded me, Joe, of the one for Mark's question. I sold my 1985 Mario Lemieux rookie card. I graded it myself. It was a PSA 8. I bought it in 1986 when it came out for 25 cents. I regret selling that because it was my childhood copy. And when I acquired a higher graded copy, I let that one go. I don't know where it is. I would love to get that one back. I can't. I have moved on. It's okay. All right, Chris, final wrap up comments to you.
Yeah, I just I'm going to give Josh Adams a pass. He's playing EA Sports NHL 25 tonight, and I don't think he realized that he said that Babe Ruth is impotent. I think he meant to say important, but he said impotent.
I wasn't sure about that. I just went, well, I
didn't even double take and go look.
Yeah.
But we're gonna forgive him because I know that he's playing video games with his kids tonight. So the fact that he's even tuned in is amazing. So shout out to him. And I also have a policy of blocking out any sentimentality towards cards that I no longer own. So I would have to go in the deep recesses of my mind if I wanted to remember that stuff. And you know what? I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave that stuff blocked out.
Nice. All right, guys, I'm going to read the final comments in the chat, and then we're going to wrap this up. You guys hang tight for a moment. Laura says, thanks, Jeremy, and all your guests for another entertaining and educational evening. Laura, thank you for being here. Foul Ball, thank you very much. Mark Santucci says, great show, great discussion. Thank you, Mark. His is his 1980 Ricky Henderson. He had 2, both as a kid, sold 1. Carvin says, love it, Joe. When we sell a card, we lose the journey. Always cherish the card that affirms the story. Nice comment, Carvin. And the Currency Project right there says the 96-97 Black Diamond Gretzky Triple Diamond Gold. Love it. Is that you, Julian, that typed that?
No, that's Abdul.
That's Abdul. Abdul, welcome to the chat. If you've been there the whole night, glad to have you. And Brett Miles, enjoyed the show as always. Thanks. Well, thank you, Brett. Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll be back on these airwaves tomorrow night with Josh Madigan of The Gong Show for the Fanatics Collect Weekly Hockey Auction Ending Watch Party. It's going to be a blast. This was great, guys. Thank you to all of our guests tonight. Dr. Rabbi David Spinrad, the Rated Rabbi on Instagram, Leighton Sheldon, Mike Sommer, Wax Pack Hero, Christina's PC from Card Ladder, Julian from the Currency Project, Chris Hoge, my buddy Joe, Kelly Dreamin 84 on Instagram. Guys, the chat was awesome tonight as always. Viewership was strong. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. If you just a reminder, these episodes are available on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. With that, this episode of Sports Cards Live 2.0, January the 25th, 2025. Thank you, Christina's PC. Is now. Who's going to say it? Who's going to say it? Is now. I'm not stopping you till when you say it.
I don't know what to say.
It starts with an O. It ends in an R. Who said it?
Over.
Good night, everybody.